All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the July 20th meeting of the Planning Commission. So we will start by reviewing and maybe approving the agenda. So there's agendas at the front of the room by the sign-in if you did not get one, if a member of the audience or a Planning Commission member. But does anyone have any comments about the agenda, any motions about the agenda?
So if I may just make one point, I think there is two items on here, one on new business and one on old business with the Habitat for Humanity and the Gettysburg Station. We got applicants for both of those two subdivisions, land developments here tonight. Just throwing this out here for you guys to consider. Eric's here for Habitat for Humanity. I expect that conversation to be maybe 5 minutes. I expect the Gettysburg Station to be significantly longer. I'm not sure if you wanted to switch those. There's nobody here from Simrat, from what I understand. That's going to be tabled, correct? So I was just wondering if you might want to knock out the Habitat for Humanity earlier and then go back to the Gettysburg Station. Just a thought. Just trying to preserve some of Eric's time. He's like me and goes to a lot of municipal meetings.
Thanks, Chad.
So can we rearrange the agenda to reflect that?
Yeah.
I'll second that.
So should we just, I don't know, John, if you want to just, it's hard to edit that, obviously, it's a PDF, but.
You can just jump around.
Okay. So we can still just pass the agenda as, all right, great. So thanks, good thought there. And it won't affect our motion on the agenda, but we'll definitely keep that in mind and likely follow that plan. Any other thoughts on the agenda? Any motions to approve the agenda?
I'll move to approve the agenda with the minor change of the order of...
I'll second.
Sorry, I heard John first. Yeah, so Marty moves to approve it with the minor change, and John seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Great, we have an agenda. So first up on that agenda, we will review and approve our meeting minutes from our June 15th meeting last month. Do any Planning Commission members have any comments on the minutes from last month? Any motions around the minutes from last month?
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, great. John moved to approve. Marty seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Great. Minutes are approved. Okay, so first up is our public comment period. So invite people to go to the podium. This is restricted to items that are on the agenda, so either tabled old business or new business. We have a big agenda today, so all I'm going to say is I'm going to try to keep folks to 5 minutes, so I'm just going to time them slightly. Usually we don't have a problem, but again, we have a large agenda today, so I'll give you some grace at the end, but try to keep your comments to 5 minutes. So any public comment, just head up to the podium and state your name and where you live, I think, typically. I'm just getting my timer out here.
Good evening. My name is Tom Pauls, 26 Highland View Lane in Gettysburg. I have submitted to 5 of the planning commissioners, and others are sharing copies, as well as to staff for the record, my comments for the night. And the comments are related to the Gettysburg Station Plan Revision and Update, file number SLD 24-003. I'm going to start with by stating that the ground level enclosed parking garage, it ought to be redesigned for the primary pedestrian access way from Stratton Street to be a safe, dedicated, and ADA compliant. In the handouts that I provided you, there is an illustration from the submitted revised plan showing 2 8-foot width ingress and egress and a 4-foot wide island. And I could not see anywhere in there where there's any kind of pedestrian safe and ADA compliant pedestrian access. And I think it's important because how are people going to get in and out of there? There's a door that's being provided on the north side, as I understand it. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, too. So I think that needs to be redesigned for that very purpose. And also, there should be an alternate pedestrian access, and I'm going to discuss that too for reasons that are relevant to the underground, ground level parking. Ideally, there should be a secondary vehicle egress. Now, there's only that one entrance and exit point is the only entrance and exit point to the garage. Should that be blocked by any traffic problem or whatever, how will fire equipment, other emergency equipment get into the garage if they can't get through that unit? So I know it's throwing another unique situation here, but I think it's important that an alternative access be considered and maybe even implemented. Fire suppression and fire apparatus vehicle access. I'm not sure what kind of fire suppression is being provided in the garage, and I don't know if it's intended for access of apparatus vehicles, fire vehicles and emergency vehicles, and if so, it's a horizontal and vertical clearance into and while they're in there to ensure that they can get around and maneuver safely. The handicap parking spaces that are located in the garage are located on the far west side of the parking unit. And while there is, I believe, access into the building, the main building, to the west of those parking spaces, if a fire were to occur, or if some kind of a electrical shutdown because of the fire or other things should occur, what would those disabled people do? One option would be to relocate the handicap spaces to the northern side of the underground parking deck and make sure that there is a secondary ADA access for people to get out if they have to. That's also true for the EV units, because all the three EV parking spaces are located deep within and to the west of the parking garage. Those two should be located on the north side with access. In case there's a fire or some kind of an issue, those folks also would be able to get out. Vehicle exhaust ventilation system. I'm sure they must have addressed this because it's a fairly enclosed unit. So what type of ventilation is being provided for vehicle exhaust in the underground ground level parking? And the interior lighting system. I know that there's an exterior lighting plan, which is typical of all development plans, but I did not see anything specific on the the type and the materials and the style of the lighting system that would be installed in the garage. Okay, the next comments deal with the transit station. And I'm just going to go on record as saying that, I oppose the demolition of the original transit station. I see that it may be a fait accompli, but I was saddened to think that that could not have been incorporated somehow into the overall system. The proposed transit station needs, and I believe, absent any unforeseen infrastructure impediments, and maybe Chad may be able to help me with this, I don't know, can be redesigned, as well as, Land Corps. Maybe they could redesign it, and here's why. Right now, it looks like the existing transit building is taking a 20-pound pack of marbles and trying to put it into a 10-pound bag. They have limited in the circulation plan, they have limited in the sidewalks serving the transit station, and the transit building itself seems to be as absolute minimum possible. The sidewalks there are 7 foot wide, but 2 feet of those sidewalks are the domed type of material that's used to ensure that people who have limited visibility know that they're about to go off the edge of the sidewalk. So there's really only 5 feet. There are 2 bathrooms there, people coming in and out. It's an area where people will be coming off of Stratton to board the bus and onboard the bus on both sides, and there's only 5 feet. I don't think that's enough. That's a minimum ADA, as I understand it, but I don't think that's enough.
So, sir, sorry to interrupt, but you're past 5 minutes, so if you want to speak one more point, and then maybe save some comments for our second comment period.
My one more point is what I have submitted to you. It's the last illustration, and that one more point is this. What the designer can do is take the existing U-turn that's shown for the bus circulation and move the aisle the same width to the south so that it is opposite the driveway that serves the main project development to the west. Right now, they're offset. And you're going to have buses coming in and out on an offset situation that's, in my humble estimation from the planner of quite a few years, is not recommended at all. And if it can be corrected, it should. And I think this is one way to do it. And what that will also do in the shaded area that you have, it will allow for a widening of the development of the site, of the building, of the sidewalks, and of the platform. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other public comment? Okay.
Good evening. My name, can you hear it?
Yep.
My name is Nancy Goodmestead. I live at 976 Fairview Avenue. I just wanted to say thank you for all the time and effort that you all are putting into this, but I also want to thank Tom. Tom has many, many years of experience and expertise in this field. He's taken so much of his own personal time to review this and help you out, but I would also very, very strongly urge the Planning Commission to get an independent consultant to help with this, because this is something that's going to change Gettysburg forever, and I think the more input, the more advice we can get, the better. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Okay, thank you all. So, from our prior discussion, we're going to skip ahead to new business very quickly, and so we'll focus on, I was just about to read it, John, SLD 26-00228, the Habitat for Humanity project on 432 and 434 South Washington. So I know we have the applicant here, a representative from the applicant here. John, can you remind us kind of what are the next steps on this? This is new business, so they're proposing something.
So, yeah, this is for a subdivision of what was previously a single parcel for a duplex. The intent now is to subdivide that parcel to allow for the duplex to be on two parcels, allowing each individual housing unit then to be able to be sold at a fee simple. The issue with it being on one parcel, the property developer, Habitat for Humanity, they have a requirement for ownership that really limits the ability to have a rental property scenario that is permitted with a duplex two-family dwelling, but is something that just doesn't work for them. As such, they were required to obtain variance related to the actual lot frontage for the parcels for the subdivision to be approved. The development itself is permitted in a way that allows for the structure to be within the required side yard setbacks, but that's something that was not a review point for the subdivision, just the lot frontage. In this district, the lot frontage is required to be 20 feet. They were roughly in the 15-foot range. The Zoning Hearing Board did provide variance relief at their last meeting on June, when was that, 29th? As such, the provisions associated with the minor subdivision review, they've met the requirement to have the variance, and they can provide that then information to that effect on the plan to be recorded. They have, the borough has been working with them regarding a rear easement issue. Chad can provide more detailed information on that, but suffice it to say, the plan itself is at a point where ministerial approval is most likely going to be either warranted, or if additional concerns from the commissioner are identified, and can be relieved at the next meeting provided. But at this point, it does seem that conditional approval could be provided this evening.
Thank you. Chad, do you have any comments on this as the borough engineer?
Yeah. I think John summed it up pretty well. I did issue a comment letter back in June 9th. I had 15 comments. Pretty much all but 2 of those comments, both relating this easement, have been addressed. like John said, the most important thing was they got that variance. So we know that that's been taken care of. That has been listed, that variance approval has been listed on the title sheet. There is one other waiver that needs to be handled. There is a waiver, this was comment number 6. There was a waiver request for the requirement to submit a separate preliminary plan from the final plan. I don't have any objections to that. Makes sense that they put them together on one plan. So if you want, I could pause there and we could handle that waiver if you wanted to take that motion, and then we can come back to the easement thing. Or do you want me to keep pushing forward?
And that waiver is just because they don't foresee any changes between the preliminary and the final plan?
Well, and I think it's more of a procedural thing. So the reason why sometimes you have to have a preliminary subdivision plan is because you need to have common or public improvements done on the site before you can finalize the subdivision. In this case, it doesn't make any sense. There's no separation really of the subdivision and the land development. It all goes together. There's no dedication of a new street like in a 100-lot subdivision, or dedication of public utilities or those kind of things.
They're pretty much leaving this.
You're not going to be accepting anything at the end, that you're basically taking it as it is now, which would effectively be a final approval.
All right.
You're kind of condensing it because it's all happening at one time.
Thanks. Okay, so
Keep pushing forward.
I think just push forward,
Yep.
yeah.
And then, so you can either make the motions together or you can make them separate. It'll be a motion to grant a waiver. So about the easements, there's covered in comments number 5 and 9 of my letter. But the easiest thing is John has it pulled up there. So see that 3-way arrow? It says variable width transportation easement for the borough of Gettysburg. That 3-way arrow there was granted to the borough whenever Dobbin Alley was split in half by the Wellspan building that was built just to the south of that. That was because there's a dead-end alley, and I guess they got to get a turnaround. This happened before me, so I don't know the specifics of that, the reason why that was granted. And then, John, if you go to the top of that plan, you can see, keep scrolling up, yeah, right there. So you see that parking lot easement and maintenance agreement? That it crosses over top of this turnaround easement. So there's a bit of a conflict with the way it exists. The top here is the existing. What you saw there at the bottom when you scroll back down is the proposed. As you can see, the applicant is looking to fix that part of that issue. The original plan we saw had an issue there, and I made that comment that this is an issue. Eric and I went back and forth with a half a dozen emails. Just today I had a conversation with Robbie Harbaugh, Public Works Director, and he said as long as the biggest thing for him is to push in the snow. Whenever you go back Dobbin Alley and you come to a dead end, you got a pile of snow somewhere. So he said as long as that hatched area and then the next 2 spaces next to it are clear whenever it's snowing or icing event, he's happy with it. So he was suggesting a sign, 3 total signs be placed in front of those parking, one where the hatched area is, just in case the markings ever wear off or somebody parks over top the hatched area, and then the next 2 spaces over, you put one sign in front of all 3 of those. The wording he would like there, Eric, is no parking during snow or ice event.
John, can I ask you, can you scroll back up? I want to see that previous spot where the 2 easements are shown. Okay, thank you.
And chronologically here, there was the variable width transportation easement granted to the borough, and that happened again when that Wellspan building was done. I don't know, 20 years ago, something like that, maybe 30 years ago, it was a while ago. And then that parking lot easement just came about whenever Wellspan gifted that lot to H4H. Right, so as soon as I saw that, I was like, wait a second, you can't just put an easement over top of the borough's turnaround easement. You know, we need it especially for snow removal. That was the biggest concern. So that was Robbie's suggestion. If you go back down, John, it does look like. So my question to you, Eric, is starting with the hatch. 1, 2, third space in, it's kind of getting cut in half by that easement. Are they looking to use that space?
If I can approach
Yeah,
it,
sure.
it might be easier to explain. So, as Chad mentioned, the easement that was on the upper sheet, that was kind of, say, given to Habitat. We didn't really have any part in writing that, where those 6 spaces were that basically took all of this up in that original easement. So we're trying to clean it up at this point. The issue that we have to work with Habitat is Wellspan wanted 6 parking spaces there for their building that sits right here. And so we're trying to keep that. This revision here, if you scroll up just a little bit, John, if you don't mind, we're taking, basically we're saying, okay, these 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces, which was what was there before, they're going to stay essentially the way they are, and we're going to shift these 2 that were reserved for Wellspan up to the top of the page there, which ties into Wellspan's other spaces, which continue off the sheet higher up. So they still keep the same number of spaces, and we just open this up that now Wellspan has access rights through the remainder of basically the whole back of the parcel. These 2 spaces would then be for the duplex, which sits on this edge of the page, and then the other 2 spaces there would be for the single-family lot that is currently vacant at this point, where there was a house there before. So it's just kind of shifting things around. By taking the easement off of the overlap here, we're effectively leaving it the way it was before Habitat ever even got involved. So I don't anticipate there being a problem with Wellspan. We can certainly talk to them. We're in discussions with them anyway because we're revising this easement. So putting the additional signage shouldn't be a problem on our end. So we just felt this was the cleanest way to take that easement totally off of the transportation easement. We, as Habitat, we can't restrict access in this area anyway because it's the borough's transportation easement. So at that point, by removing that easement out, we're wiping our hands of it on Habitat's side, and hopefully there's no issues with the borough because you guys, you have your easement sitting there the way it should be, and it should have been when we got that lot. So I hope that helps to explain it a little bit better.
Yeah, thank you.
So then to conclude my presentation here, those are the only 2 comments. And the only reason that I'm fine with the way it's shown right now. The only reason that I've suggest that if you if you're willing to grant a conditional approval, that you would make it conditioned on satisfaction of those easements is because I'm seeing here that, like Eric's response to comment number 5 says that they're still in the conversation with Wellspan about that. So I understand that that's not completely resolved just yet. Wellspan needs to still agree to what Eric's showing on the plan. So I would I'd call that out that your conditional approval would be conditioned on satisfaction of that easement being agreed to by Wellspan and the installation of those 3 signs.
We would have no issue with that. We've been in discussion with Wellspan about the layout, as you see here. It's just a matter of getting the actual signatures on the document. So I don't anticipate there being an issue there, and the signage really doesn't change on their end of things. So I can't anticipate that being a problem. But certainly we understand the risk. If it is an issue, we'll have to come back to you guys and talk about it again. So yeah, we would be fine with that being an issue.
I'm sorry to make you repeat yourself. So I'm looking at that dark gray area. So that's, as it's labeled, revised parking lot easement between Habitat and Wellspan. So Wellspan's going to be taking, I'll say, superior rights to that shaded area, and it's going to curve around. It's going to be those top 2 spaces where it says bituminous paving. Do I have that right?
So
I think those are the tenant spaces. It's the 2 above.
Oh, the 2 above.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, so the non-hatched ones, it's kind of weird because it jumps. These 2 spaces will effectively be reserved for this lot here. Wellspan will just be able to keep what's essentially 4 spaces here, and those 2 up top.
And those spaces down below, those 6 diagonal spaces currently, that's on Habitat's property?
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah. So these 1, 2, 2.5. That's within the Gettysburg Borough access easement, but it's still within our property. And then the remainder 1.5 here, again in Habitat's property, but that would be part of the easement. And then these would be the ones that Habitat would have full control over, or the owners of these lots would have full control
So the easement itself isn't contiguous?
Correct.
Okay. Gotcha.
Okay, so, and it sounds like day-to-day WellSpan can use those to park, no problem, they're kind of theirs, except during a snow emergency, that's when kind of the borough's needs kick in. And it's the understanding that the easement is saying WellSpan would not park there because the borough would need that to turn the snow plows and whatnot.
Yeah, and that's fine, and the way I view it, at least, whether or not they see it the same way, is that that's occurring now.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it's out there, I'm sure they're plowing the snow there now, so it shouldn't change operationally how it's been for the last however many years. So it's
Okay.
just clearing it up.
Yeah, and right, logistically, so I think Eric hit the nail on the head there. It's been like that for this 20 years, 30 years. WellSpan's been kind of parking there. When it snows a lot, apparently they don't because it's never been an issue. I think sometimes our public works guys push the snow. Sometimes WellSpan, whenever they're clearing their driveways, I think they just do it. They just clear the snow. It's only a little tiny piece of that alley. If you know Mayor Alley, there's a Loma Center right there. It cuts around. So there's only a really short little stub. It's just barely north of the paper where you're entering that site there. So it's not a very long spot for them to have to be able to get in and out of. But we just wanted to make sure, should it ever, because there is the Loma Center back there with some parking spaces. That's another private property. Should the borough ever need to be able to clear that out to get to it, they're going to need to have some space there to put some snow. It's only going to ever be an issue if there's a significant snow where they got to pile it up.
Okay, great. So it sounds like a planning commission, we have two things to focus on. One would be potentially accepting or not the waiver to accept this as both the preliminary and the final plan, which our borough engineer is recommending. And then the second would be whether or not we want to, we could, as I see it, we could accept it for review like we normally would, and then continue these discussions, or we can accept for a conditional review with the conditions we've talked about, or of course, we don't have to accept at all. That is always an option. So I would invite comment from planning commission members if any of those plans seem agreeable, or if there are questions or concerns.
Do you have a proposed document to terminate that easement? It's in the works?
Attorney United is working.
Okay, gotcha.
And I'm sorry, there was, so the conditions would be like the easement and then also seals and signatures. I forgot about saying
Okay.
that. As you can see, the plan title sheet is not signed yet, so they had the owner's notarized signature and the engineer's signatures on it.
So I'm getting a sense from Chad that you have no concerns about accepting conditional approval?
Correct.
With those two particular conditions. John, do you have any?
No.
Then I would move that we accept for conditional, well, that solicitor, do we? You seem to be asking some questions.
I would work on the modification and waiver first.
Yes, I will.
Oh,
Thank you.
So
I'll move to waive the preliminary plan submission and accept a final plan.
is that worded okay?
Yeah.
Second.
All right, so Marty moved and Charles seconded. Any further discussion from the Planning Commission on that point? This is just accepting the waiver to not have the preliminary plan. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Great, all right, so that's one done. And so now we come to the issue of conditionally accepting the plan with the two conditions of the easement being worked out with the borough. I guess it's kind of three. The easement being worked out with the borough, signage being put up, or maybe that's part of the easement, and then sealed and signature as well.
I like it that way with three separate things.
Okay.
Yeah, makes sense.
So any motions to work on the acceptance?
So moved.
Second.
All right, so Charles moved, John seconded, and just to be clear, we're moving to conditionally accept with three conditions, which is that the easement is figured out with the borough to the borough's satisfaction, that signs are put up about snow removal to the borough's satisfaction, and that the seals and signatures are on the plan.
Yeah. No, I just want to clarify, are you accepting the plan or are you approving the plan?
We would be approving the plan.
Approving with conditions.
Yes, thanks, Adam. Be approving with those three conditions. With that in mind, any additional comment from Planning Commission members? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Great. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
I don't know if that was 5 minutes, Chad.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
A little longer, so.
Get out
No, I'm glad we got it all
Get
straightened
out
out.
of here.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So now we will move back to tabled old business, and we appreciate our representatives here being patient with us as we switch the agenda around. But first up on tabled old business is SLD 24-0003, the Gettysburg Station project. So we have some plan revisions and updates. So as we all know, this has been in the works for a while, and we've been talking about it, but we recently received some response to comments from the borough engineer and others. And so, John, you want to give us kind of a quick where we're at, and then Chad, I'd ask you to talk through the comments that you provided, comments to the comments.
So you've been working with the developer now for a few years, and we've gotten to a point where most of the, I guess, concerns relate to things like the traffic impact. We have completion of the transit center design occurring with the COA being provided by HARB and at the last meeting, and with proposal to be approved at the August Borough Council meeting. The plan sets themselves modifications related to stormwater have changed some of the design that goes into the buildings, but overall, we've kind of been at this point where it's 3 main structures, 1 parking deck, and then how the landscaping fits with it. The applicant's here tonight and can provide a more detailed overview of the plan sets, and the engineer has provided general comments. These are just provided today. But otherwise, plan sets were provided. If you need a hard copy, I think we have 2 sets available left for Planning Commission members. But that's all I would have to add.
And can I ask a question before that, Mr. Harrison? Okay, I was thinking, given what you just mentioned about how long we've had this, if we could just get a sense from Chad and John, like, where we've been and where we are now for what you expect a series of action items to be, and what this plan is compared to, like, the last time we saw this. So this is what I mean. So I was just going through some old minutes, and I believe before this we had a preliminary plan that was submitted in April 2025. Is that right? Mm-hmm. So we had a preliminary plan in April 2025. We got comments from you, Chad, in May of that year, last year. And then we went through a series of extensions, June to September, September to November, November to January, January to April, April to June, June to August 17th at the meeting I wasn't at. So my question is, over the course of those 5 extensions, what work has been accomplished? I was looking, one amount of work that has been accomplished is a heck of a lot of work on the traffic impact study. And that was discussed last month to some degree. Second, I believe that Mr. Harrison and his team have met with borough staff in a series of meetings like last summer, that's in the minutes, to kind of go through some of those comments. And then the third is, and this is just for my clarity, and I'm being an annoying historian to try to get the context so I understand what we're about to do over the next few months. The third amount of work is getting it to a point where Mr. Harrison is submitting this material here as of when? When would we say this plan comes in, and how is it in the track of the plan that we first received in April? That, like, the April plan was a preliminary plan.
Yep. So,
And when does it transition into this?
so first, let me touch on the word preliminary, and as you can see on the title sheet, it's now called a preliminary final. And this goes back into that same thing of having a separate preliminary plan versus a final plan, and whether it makes sense to have a. So whenever you have, one way to look at it is a subdivision can be preliminary and final if the land development components need to be done before you can start selling lots. In this case, they're not creating new lots to be sold. It's not like this is not a J. Myers or Burkentine or Ryan Homes 100-lot subdivision where they're going to start selling these lots. So the need to break this into a preliminary versus a final plan, whenever you see the word preliminary and final, you're talking about the subdivision component, not the land development. People get confused a lot of times whenever they see that. They think, well, a preliminary land development plan is just a preliminary plan. They really can't build anything off of it. That's not accurate. The preliminary is just for the subdivision component. There's a land development plan. There really isn't any such thing as a preliminary and final land development plan. It's just a land development plan. Once a preliminary plan is approved that has land development components on it, the developer may go ahead and build all of those things. Build the roads, build the utilities, build those things. They just can't sell any lots until they get a final subdivision plan that they can start selling the lots. This is not that case. This is not one of those things. So it's a lot like the Habitat for Humanity discussion we just had. It makes sense that those two things are together. So everything you just said is accurate. There was a plan submitted back in April of last year. Whether it was preliminary or final doesn't matter. It was the plan, right? Moving forward, we started off, and I actually did a little bit of homework before I came here tonight to answer exactly that question. We started off with a little over 70 comments. We're down to about 30 at this point. So I think that's kind of painting the picture. We're more than halfway there, I would say. Do I think we can get to the end before the end of this year? Yes, I think we can. There's still a decent amount of work that needs to be done, but I think we could get to the end before the end of this year. There's still about 5 outside agency comment reviews that are out there, and that's, I don't want to speak for Tim or Alex, let them speak for themselves, but that's a lot of the work that's been done. There's County Conservation District, that NPDES permit application process that you're well aware of. That's a 6-month review process. There's a lot that goes in NPDES permits. The traffic impact study with PennDOT, that's quite a process. They're down to just a couple of things. We're getting really close to having that pushed across the goal line. They need PennDOT's approval. The fire department's review, GMA's review, Gettysburg Municipal Authority, and Robbie Harbaugh, the borough HOP review, and then we have the Gettysburg Borough Stormwater Authority. So we have, what is that, 6 or 7 outside agency reviews that still are outstanding yet that we're getting through. All of them are getting close. Actually, I should add another one. There was another HARB component to this for the transit center being moved. So there was an outside agency there with that too. So there's a lot of different other reviews and approvals that they needed to get done before they could get, so it was a chicken and egg type of a thing for a lot of those things. So that's how I would summarize it. We were from 70 comments down to 30. We still have a lot of outside agency where we're really close to being approved. I think we can advance this tonight. Certainly not going to be ready tonight for a conditional approval. You might be willing to act on some of the waivers for some of the landscaping components so that they can move forward with those things. But that would be the only thing that would be ripe for any type of formal approval tonight.
And that's very, very helpful. And the reason I ask it, and then I'll be quiet here, is as we've discussed, the borough, at least in my experience, hasn't ever had the opportunity to review something like this. And so we need as much help as we can get, which is why I kept asking about how are you getting help on the traffic study. And like when Mrs. Gumestad brings this up, and others have also brought it up to me, given how complicated this is, shouldn't the Planning Commission or the borough find an independent reviewer? I understand the impulse and the reason why that's out there, but we do have that in the form of C.S. Davidson and all of those other agencies that you mentioned. But it seems to me that our job as the Planning Commission, who will ultimately vote on this, is keeping all of these bodies and all of these approvals and comments organized in a way where we can add value to this and ultimately be able to make a decision. So we don't need an independent person to do it or agency if we are following all the different pathways and all the different groups that are organized or that are responding to this plan, which I know Chad and John help us to do. But then the last thing is, though, if we want to engage with Mr. Harrison and on particulars of the plan, how do we make sure that the suggestions we make or the decisions about waivers that we make or don't make are also going to be then reviewed by all these other groups. If we move in one direction, won't that have like an impact on another direction, which we've seen with like stormwater impacting design, egress and ingress affecting parking. That does give me anxiety about how that all intersects with each other.
So what the Planning Commission needs to do is, as one voice, provide that guidance to the applicant.
Okay. Say that with more words so I know what you mean. Like
So an individual member can have questions for the applicant, but the body, the Planning Commission, is what's making this decision. And Planning Commission should be guiding the applicant. If you need to see things as a body, then that should be provided to the applicant and should be expressed in such a way that the other review agencies are aware that this is something that the Planning Commission is going to require for approval of the site plan.
So that solicitor would perhaps come in the form of consensus or actual votes. Well, waivers are cut and dry, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's very simple. But other types of Planning Commission necessities related to our interpretation of the saldo should be communicated as one voice in what way, so that then the developer can go to the other agencies and make sure that they're aware and the process keeps moving forward. And
I don't want to put words in John's mouth, but I believe what he was saying is that if you as a body, which is ultimately going to be considering, whether this should be approved, if you collectively indicate that before this is approved, XYZ needs to be shown in more detail or amended or demonstrated or, insert your verb of choice, give that direction to the applicant so that they can proceed accordingly. For purposes of discussion, obviously, you can ask questions. That's what John was indicating. But and again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think what you're saying is that it's not a situation of Charles Strauss would like to see this so that Charles Strauss can vote yes.
Yeah, I get that. I think that answers all my questions, and I apologize for asking all those sort of procedural things before we even get a chance to hear from the developer, but I think they're important.
Yeah, and if I could just say, so I think it's an outstanding question about comments from one agency affecting another agency's review, because it's very common in the world of civil engineering and land development. Alex can attest. It's like a Rubik's cube, right? So we might have a comment that affects the traffic impact study, and the solution to those two things changes the amount of pavement that's going to be on the property. Now it changes your stormwater management plan and what stormwater authority is looking at, and then that changes the NPDS permit. So one of my favorite metaphors, the chicken and egg. What approval do you get first? Eventually, you got to keep massaging the Rubik's Cube until you get it all right, and you try to address everybody's comments. It's not easy. There's not a silver bullet here, perfect way of making sure that this agency gets approval first, and then sometimes you got to be working on all of the fronts at the same time, which is why we've been talking about this for as long as we have, and they're working on all of these other agency review comments at the same time, because they all do impact each other. So I think it's really, I think, a wise question that Charles is asking, and something that we certainly want to make sure that we stay on top of.
I mean, I can add to that as well, and I think what we're looking for and the reason we're here tonight, I mean, Chad noted, we have a letter, we might not be ready for a final vote tonight, but what we're looking for is exactly that feedback, because we are in the process of responding to Chad's letter that we got today. We're going to revise the plan to respond to that. Those same drawings will go back to GMA. They'll go back to the NPDS permit. They'll go back. All those submissions and changes are all coordinated with any changes that come out of this body. So really what we're looking for today, and the reason we're here, is to see if there's any of those big picture issues that would affect limit of disturbance that affects stormwater and NPDS permit, paving changes, entrance modifications, sidewalks, etc. So that when we go to address Chad's letter and then resubmit both to Chad and all those other agencies, we're absorbing any comments that you have on the letter at once, so that when we're back here next month or whenever we come back, we've addressed those comments. This letter's clean. We've addressed your comments, and we're further along with those third-party agencies. So we're getting to the point where you guys are comfortable with the layout, and we're working through those third-party permits so that we're in a position for it. And that's really, I think, what we're looking for today is those big picture issues that you guys have concerns about that we need to address so that we can get all those third-party agencies and Chad's review, to the finish line so that next time we're here we can get it.
And I would just add, thank you for that. I have a lot of, I don't know, I feel the pain of our chair right now because you are going to have to navigate responses to what we just heard when we just received this ourselves. And so we've had this with other projects, of course. The developers are there. They've taken the time to come and hear our feedback, but we are not ready to give it. And I don't know how to handle that, but you're the chair. I mean, how, or John maybe has suggestions, like to give the feedback that's necessary for me personally is going to take more time than probably this meeting would allow.
Well, you've accepted an extension on this plan through your August meeting, but I think what the applicant's communicating is they would like as much feedback as they can get here this evening from you as a body.
I get that, and I just find it even hard to hardly give any, but we'll see how the conversation goes.
Well, yeah, I think we, work through this like we would any other plan. I know it's more complicated, and I appreciate these questions being asked. I think I would encourage Planning Commission members, if they have reviewed something that they have questions about they'd like to see, to speak up. But at the same time, I think normally at this point we would, go to Chad to kind of review his comments that he originally put that are still, I'm glad that you went from whatever it was to 30, a lot higher than 30 to 30. So if there are any particular comments that you feel, Chad, that you'd like to bring up or think is important to bring up at this meeting, I think we typically kind of appreciate your thoughts there on kind of what to highlight from your report.
Yeah, and before I jump in, I have 10 comments circled that I want to go through tonight. Charles, we just got this 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So that's why my letter, literally before I came here tonight, I hit print and brought it with me. It's hot off the press. I don't think, because we only got it 2 weeks ago to defend the borough here, you're not obligated to make any decisions tonight. Right. It would be helpful to help stop the chicken and egg thing, and the chasing your tail or whatever metaphor you want to use with all the different agencies. So whatever we can address tonight, that's great. You're not obligated to. I just want to make sure that that's clear.
Yeah, and just I'm not criticizing anyone, as you know.
Sure.
I know when these things come in. It's just I feel the pressure, of a large project with the developer coming out of his way to be here, expecting feedback, and we have to show feedback. And I just wanted to preface that the pressure is hard to deliver on.
And before I get into this, Tim, did you want to provide any other upfront comments before I get into it?
Yeah, I wouldn't feel too worried about that.
Okay.
We're not we're not opposed to a further extension as long as we feel that we're making progress here. No one has taken time to the planning commission or anything like that. As long as you're willing to get an extension, it's fine with me. And we are doing our best to narrow the comments down. I think you'll see when Chad goes through, we did start with 70. The comment letter that we got on, last time we were here, which was March 16th, was 30. Most of those are unsatisfying. Now we're down to about 10 that Chad mentioned. All these relate to the subdivision ordinance, so you'll see when Chad goes through them, a lot are pretty specific, like we have bartlett pear trees or gateway trees, things like that. We'll really do anything you want. It's just, and you don't have to tell us tonight, but at some point, you'll decide we prefer ginkgo to bartlett, and then we have direction on that one. We can check that one off the list and move on. I think that the big picture global items, we've been at this for a while now. The big picture items, we've kind of gone through quite a bit, and nothing's really changed in configuration of buildings, the number of units, the parking spaces, all those big picture things are pretty much set. I mean, if you said to us tonight, well, gee, we'd like you to move the Carlisle building and reverse it with the Stratton building, you know, I don't know if that would really be appropriate at this point. Because, you know, it's been on the plan for so long. What we're really dealing with now is subdivision issues. Are we complying with the subdivision ordinance? And if we're not, we've got to fix the plan so it's done. So it's a more technical, as opposed to a substantive, gee, we like this building, should it be higher, lower, should it be here or there, should it be brown or white? You know, a lot of those issues have been resolved already. It's really more, these are more technical. And eventually we'll get to a point where you feel like, okay, we've reached a meeting of the minds on all. At that point, you'll decide if you feel that we comply or we don't comply. But whenever that time is, we'll be willing to work with you and become more and try to make as much progress without creating a feeling of pressure or urgency moving forward in a reasonable process.
Great.
May I just want to echo from my own understanding, Chad, what I kind of think I heard you say was that, you know, there's a process with all these moving parts, but we should focus right now what's in our scope and trust that these other issues will be resolved, and then we trust that those processes are taking place, even if it means, you know, one time there's a step forward and then 2 steps back, you know, with part A of that plan, you know, but we should limit our scope right now to what we have in front of us would be the most appropriate use of our time tonight, at least.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And just to add to what Tim said, I think you spoke a little bit of the evolution of the plan. I mean, we've been before this body a few times and had some of those high-level discussions. You know, one of the major changes from Chad's original letter when we first started was, you know, the layout, and it's not really a road, but the major drive aisle that cuts through the center that's got the bike trail on it. You know, when we first came in, we had tree wells and trees on the building side of that. You know, one of the first major revisions from this board and Chad's discussion was, well, no, we want the bike trail to have the trees, not the building side. So we flipped that road around. We created a grass strip along the bike trail instead of along the building. We shifted the road over 5 feet or whatever it was, flipped the trees, kind of got the environment of the road width that we wanted. You know, that was one of the first revisions we did. Then through the TIS, we worked with the entrance with PennDOT between Chad's office and the TIS, our traffic engineer. We removed a couple parking stalls at the entrance, you know, made that driveway entrance a little bit longer before you had a car pulling in to give a little bit more buffer for vehicles entering into the site, et cetera. That was kind of the last year of revisions when we were working through getting those 70 comments down to, you know, 30 and these 10 major ones today. So in our opinion, we've kind of worked through some of those big planning issues. If you remember a lot of the conversations last time we were here, where our traffic consultant was here, we were talking a lot about the environment of the bike trail crossings, Carlisle and Stratton Street. We worked through some of those details. There's still one comment I think Chad's going to bring up about the crosswalk. We can get into that. But we walked through a lot of those issues about how we want the bike trail to intersect with the roadways. So we believe we've addressed a lot of those big picture issues. Obviously, if there's still more comments on that, we're happy to discuss those tonight. But as this letter gets, you know, clarified and refined and some of those comments start to fall off, as Tim noted, you know, we're now here, we're down to kind of the details. You know, should this tree be this species or that? Do you want a couple more trees? You know, we have some landscape waivers. Chad has some recommendations in this letter. We're looking for, you know, some feedback on kind of how many trees we want, what species of trees we're looking for, that kind of stuff. We're getting, you know, more detailed and less broad, at least in our opinion. So we thought we addressed a lot of the big picture kind of planning issues in the last few discussions. If there's still some of those topics, you know, we're happy to discuss those tonight, but I think our goal is we're trying to get down to more of the details, which are a little bit more, you know, engineer to engineer. You know, we're here for any additional feedback. you know, on Chad's kind of 10 big picture comments, but, you know, our hope is that we're starting to really hone in. The layout kind of is what it is, and now we're buttoning up the details.
Right, and I might also say, in terms of the list of the other agencies that have to comment, we really have no comments left on the TIS from PennDOT. What we do need is a letter from the borough concurring with PennDOT, no comments on the TIS. And we need that letter from the county. Those are the only two PennDOT comments. Once they get those letters, then the TIS is being approved, and then they'll say, okay, show us your highway acquisition program, which basically means show us the design of your entrance way onto Carlisle Street. When that's coming. But that, again, that's more of a construction drawing sort of review. Do we meet PennDOT's criteria for
So I hate to continue to delay Chad's comments. This is the biggest build-up to your comments we've ever had. But just this expression that we did the big things and now we're just checking off the small things, engineer to engineer, I don't think I agree with that characterization, but someone correct me. The plan that we got in April, we were able to sort of respond to, Chad, your comments in May of last year. But from May until last month, we really didn't do a whole lot of deliberation among the Planning Commission other than when Mr. Harrison was here in March and we talked about traffic a little bit. So I don't know if it's the case that these last 10 or 30 comments are going to be technical, and that I imagine you've queued some of them up, Chad, to be like deliberation among these 5 Planning Commission members. So it wasn't that we kind of as a Planning Commission gave any of our recommendations really at all. We were having our staff, the experts, file their comments to you and work with you. And then now it seems to me to be the kind of roll up your sleeves work on some of those interpretations of the saldo that could be complicated. Is that right? And then while the public has been giving its input at our meetings all these many months, even when we didn't really have it on our agenda.
Yeah, so I think both can be true, right? I think there are still a handful of items here where, and I even offered to Alex that we could have another workshop meeting where we can go through some of these specifics that doesn't matter to you guys. Is there's some lines that are over top of each other because they get comments from, is it MedEd or Adams Electric? It's MedEd, and they want an easement to be shown one way. Well, now that easement line is cutting into a different easement line and it's not matching up. Like, that's one of my comments. Like, that doesn't matter to you guys. That's just making me and MedEd making sure that we got our easement lines shown right. So there's going to be some of that stuff. But there is about 2 or 3 items that I want to get through tonight that are still, I'm going to say, a little bit high level. One of them is how the buses are coming in and out of the transit center and the SCAP lot and Hazel Alley there. That's one of the things I want to touch on. And I think the other one is, and we even heard some public comment earlier tonight about the architectural drawings for the parking garage and pedestrian ingress and egress and those kind of things. So we don't have that architectural drawing yet. The applicant's still working on the architectural drawing. So there are still a couple of, I'm going to call them higher level things, but most of it is details at this point. So I think both can be true, is what I'm getting at.
Well, I think a good reminder, I'll say as the chair, is, as we talked about earlier, we're likely not approving this plan today. I mean, I can't foresee the future, but I think there's still obviously some things to work out. And so I think as Planning Commission members, we've had a couple days to review this from what we got it. Great. And then we'll continue to review that, do our homework. We reconvene in August and we see where we're at, right? I think, as Mr. Harrison said, and I appreciate if we need to request another extension at that time, we can, and we can keep going until we're feeling good. Obviously, to Jenny's point, I think we want to make sure we're focused on the things that are in the purview of the Planning Commission and not anything else that's, really not our business to focus on. So yeah, I think we'll get into it. We'll get where we get tonight, and we'll continue this discussion likely in August. So with that, Chad, if you want to start your comments.
So the first one I want to stop on is on the second page, comment number 17. It's subdivision ordinance comment number 17. And this is just to me mentioning that there's a couple of hatch patterns that are overlapping each other. I'm a little bit confused with that. And the only reason we don't need to get into the weeds right now of those hatch patterns, that wasn't the point I wanted to stop there, but it's because a little bit later in one of the comments I want to stop on is a lot about, it's actually the next one I want to stop on. Let's just go right to it. Comment number 32 is on the next page, which is the landscaping comments. So the applicant's asking waivers of 32B, C, D, E, and F there. Those are all, I'm sorry, B, C, E, and F, not D. So at some point, they're going to be looking to you guys to weigh in on waivers of landscaping requirements. We've always known that from the very beginning, that it was going to be very difficult to get all of the planning units on this property. The one that I think that we need to talk about a little bit here tonight is comment A. And Marty, I believe this was something that you had brought up. Along the bike trail, there's ginkgos, the ginkgo bilobas. And we were suggesting that a couple of more could be added. I was looking at it myself, and I'm thinking up to 5 more trees could potentially be added along that bike trail. John, if you wanted to pull up the landscaping drawing and maybe show them what we're talking about. That's 3/4 of the way through. Right there. So you can see the bike trail and those round circles. It's like a double round circle along the trail. Looks like tires or wheels. Those are the ginkgos. So that was the comment about how we can add a few more of those. I do think that we could add a few more. The applicant's response was, we'll discuss the option of additional plant material with the borough. So this is the opportunity for them to discuss that. So Alex, did you have any thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, and obviously, a lot of the landscape waivers we talked about, we talked about this in one of the early meetings, a lot of the landscape waivers relate to the fact that it's an elevated parking garage and we can't plant, parking lot trees in the lower level of a parking garage or even on the upper level with an elevated deck. So a lot of the landscape waivers were requested kind of relate to the condition of how this site's going to be built. But in that, really, it looks at it globally of, there's obviously some trees that are generated by that requirement that can't fit in the landscape plan. This is an opportunity to increase additional, plantings just to supplement and get some more trees. It's really a question of what the environment of that bike trail wants to be. Do you want a bike trail with, 30 foot on center, 20 foot on center repeating trees? Or do you want more trees on there and have, as Chad describes, it's not more of a continuous canopy where the bike trail is, continually covered by trees that are much closer. We put more trees in there. Obviously more trees on there helps offset some of that waiver. So this is one of those design issues. Right now we have, in kind of every bay of parking, we have 2 street trees. If you guys say, well, we want 3 or 4 in there and we want, them much closer together, we'll add the trees. I think it's a question of what does that environment along that bike trail want to be? More of a repeating kind of alley of trees or a continuous kind of canopy cover as we ride down the bike trail? Either one is acceptable to us. This is the kind of direction we're looking for, and then we'll, adjust the plan accordingly.
So you spaced them 27 feet. I think you matched them up with the actual parking spots, which I think is really smart, because the trunk will be positioned in such a way that the car won't be coming in and potentially hit it. That is ideal. The ginkgo biloba, great tree. I was hoping maybe for something with a little more arching structure. Your landscape architect ultimately signs the plans, though, so I will respect their opinion. I did go to school for landscape architecture. I'm not practicing by any means, but the ginkgo is very upright and doesn't have that. I just feel like it would.
Like a broader canopy.
Yeah, I sort of imagine spreading. Now the honey locust is spreading, and you do show some of those. I I made the comment, I pointed out that I thought you could put in more trees there, but I also I want to be respectful of your landscape architect too. I respectfully disagree that there's enough trees, but I think it's okay.
I don't think we're making that supposition. I think we're asking kind of what environment you guys like. I think
It's tough. I mean, I think positioning those trunks on that 27 on that line makes a lot of sense, though. So I haven't tried to do my own design of it, though. So
I mean, what we might agree to, and I think maybe is the compromise is add some trees, but not so much that we're having to push the trees around where now we have a trunk in the center of a parking stall and creating that conflict that you're concerned about, but moving them around such that we can still maintain the trees aligning with the, the in-between of the parking stalls to avoid any conflicts, but get, as Chad said, maybe 3, 4, 5 more trees along that bike trail. I think there's an opportunity to add some additional trees.
And if you could suggest another species that you think would be better, you could add some of those.
one we've had a lot of luck with is the Chinese elm as a street tree. They seem to have good disease resistance and small leaf, so they're not messy. We have many of them planted around them. But
and I think generally my thoughts are, I do appreciate that. I think two things I think are challenging for you for landscaping for our Saldo. And number one is that, that parking that we talked about, not being able to put stuff there in the structure. Number two, I don't know when these were written, if we were envisioning the number of dwelling units in such a space, right? I mean, that's part of this whole thing in this borough, right, is that it's a lot of units. And so I think generally, I think we understand why there's, or at least I understand why there's some waivers. And so, but to that point, I think anything you can do to add some more planning units where you can add them, at least for me, I think that would be appreciated. So this is one where, I would probably personally agree with that. Again, not to say that it would be a challenge to fulfill every single one, and so I'm sure we'll still see some waivers, and that's understandable. But if there are, little places like that where you can kind of just throw a few more in, I think at least as a member of the borough who rides their bike constantly and cuts through this area currently, it'd be great, to have some more trees there.
I think that's a great point, Nick, about how the additional stories, which allow for additional residences, requires additional parking, and perhaps when the landscaping rules were put in, that wasn't anticipated. But we're talking about going from 370 to 66, but you just said maybe you could get a few more than 66?
Well, that 370 is for the planning units, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's 2 planning units per dwelling unit.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm saying is that number is going to be pumped up because we're not used to having buildings this high with so many dwelling units, right? So that's what I'm seeing as I see that as a challenge. Like, when's the last time we had a plan that had this many dwelling units necessitating, that number of planning units, and especially building vertically. You're adding dwelling units vertically, you can't add space horizontally to put those plans. So again, I'm not speaking on what we'll end up doing with the waiver, and I appreciate everyone else's thoughts. That's just, I understand personally, and I'm pointing it out, that is a challenge that you're facing that maybe other people developing in this borough hadn't faced in the past.
I think in support of that waiver, I agree. We'll look to add, the highest quantity of trees along the bike trail we can while maintaining kind of the design approach with the parking complexes.
I'm going to try to look up what the actual the waivers, because
I don't know if you can add them on the other side of the bike path, if that's. I know there's grading issues there potentially. There are 4 existing.
No, he's talking about A.
There are 4 existing maples there. The site looking towards the back of the hotel is not very good. I would want to block that if I were a developer, and the noise from the train potentially. But I do realize there are limits.
Yeah, I'll talk to our landscape architect. That corridor is relatively narrow. I'll see if she's comfortable with adding trees on that side. But yeah, that's another opportunity to add some extra canopy cover, maybe offset it with those other trees where we don't have, a park snow conflict on the outside side of the bike trail, but we can maybe, interconnect those canopies across the trail. But let me look a little closer into the width of that.
The Annabelle hydrangeas can sometimes topple over, they get so heavy with bloom, they would fall out onto the bike path potentially. So I'd rather see a tree personally, but
I think a good reminder for the Planning Commission, again, we're going to continue to review this. The waivers that they're requesting are on page 17 of what we received electronically. I don't know what page they're on to the physical.
3.
3, thanks, Charles, of the physical.
Wait. No, that's page 1 of 40. I don't know, there are many different numbers on the bottom of this.
On the title sheet
On the title sheet.
the LD plan.
Yeah.
The first
And
one.
then I found it helpful to pull up, our kind of E-code to compare what the actual waiver says. So, not to stop comment, but I think something that I don't think we're going to approve or deny the waiver tonight. So, an additional point of something to look into, because it sounds like our borough engineer also was pointing it out.
one point on this waiver request, 2 planting units per dwelling unit. I don't think we imagined a higher density.
Exactly.
Development. So I think it would potentially make sense to grant that waiver given the density.
If you think that 66 is the right number, how do we arrive at that being the right number, and not 100 or something?
Correct. Yeah,
If we took 3 stories off, what would it be? How many dwelling units? We could do it that way. How many dwelling units are in 4 stories and make it? I'm not saying take it off the plan. I'm saying to calculate our landscaping. John, does that make any sense?
Yeah, that's something we could do a back of the envelope calculation for you, but in terms of you're still going to need more trees. They're still going to need a waiver even with the 4 stories, I believe. They've included impervious surface in areas that really limit their ability to plant trees. That's the reality.
And maybe, Alex, you can reword this a little bit differently on the title sheet and the waiver relief grant requested. If you look at my comment number 32C, it talks about 2 planting units provided for every 1,000 square feet. So a square dimension is different than that stacking on. So that one makes a little bit more sense.
It does.
Maybe you can show that there, Alex. That would be the 3rd waiver request down on the title sheet. It says requiring 23 planting units. I'd be interested to see how close we're going to be hitting to that. And also, if you wouldn't mind checking, I just can't remember if the original if these numbers on this waiver request have changed since the beginning, because I know we've been talking about plantings here a couple of times. I know you've added a bunch of trees where you could. I'm not sure that those have been updated, and if we're going to add 5 more trees, that's 5 more. It's 5 minor equals 1 unit. 5 shrubs is 1 unit. 2 minor trees is 1 unit, or 1 major tree is a unit. So if we're going to add 5 more major trees, then you got 5 more planting units, so that whole table needs to get updated then. So if...
Yeah, I think this is helpful. Yeah, and I agree that the density with the vertical versus the building square footage, we can...
That kind of makes more sense.
Yeah. Muttering, try and tie it to the one standard versus the other. And
right.
Show, meeting kind of the intent of the footprint of the building and take away some of that density that comes from the increased height. I think that makes sense.
So with that, I'm assuming that we're not going to be stopping on any of the waiver requests tonight just because of what I just said. I think all of those numbers are going to change a little bit and give Alex a chance to go through and update the table accordingly.
But as far as feedback, I think I'm here. I think you would hear that there seems to be.
I'm okay with discussing them all if you want to.
It's up to you guys. Yeah, we can go through them each if you want to, or.
It gives us direction, so.
Yeah, if there's any other specific, I think I was saying earlier, reminder that we have time, but if you have specific comments about it now, I think they're here.
Yeah, I think all the feedback B talks a little bit about the street trees on the frontage. Obviously with this project, a lot of the frontage is taken up by the entrance drive, which kind of hurts our ability. When you take that lot frontage and just divide by the spacing, you know, with the buildings right up against the right-of-way and the entrance, you know, it's a little bit difficult to fit trees in there, so I think one of the other discussions or some feedback we would look for is, you know, are you guys comfortable with kind of the limited street trees, or, you know, should we be looking at, you know, can we really try and jam in one more tree? I think we tried to kind of honor a little bit of the appropriate spacing with the entrances that take up a good bit of our frontage. But, you know, if you guys would like to see, you know, one more tree on each roadway, you know, that's feedback we would like to know now, so that when our landscape architect is recalculating all these compliance things, you know, we're kind of presenting what you guys want to see.
That's the second item on the table that's on the overhead. They're requiring 7 trees. They're proposing 4.
So this one does sort of specify where they should be located. They say between the sidewalk and the building setback line, at least 5 feet from the sidewalk. So what is the building setback line on this project?
I think that's the difficulty. This zoning code kind of wants almost like the zero setback style.
Mm-hmm.
So our street trees are, you know, kind of tree wells in the sidewalk in this case, because the buildings are right up pretty much at the right-of-way line. So there is no behind the sidewalk in this.
Yeah, we've talked about that.
Zoning district. So it's a little bit, I guess, inconsistent between what the zoning asks for and what the landscape plan asks for.
Correct.
So there's the space, and then there's also how many we fit kind of in that corridor.
And we're actually going to work on revising our saldo, and this is one that I think potentially needs revision because the zoning does not match this existing rule.
Yeah, that fits Cool Park, where you have yards. It doesn't fit, and there's an actual building setback. Mm-hmm. A lot of our downtown has build to requirements. It's not a setback per se. So there is no space between the sidewalk and the front of the building. So the only place that there is you either put a tree box out along the back of curb or maybe a grass strip along the back of curb. That's the only space. And that's all of the downtown. That's the old town basically is like that.
Shall we move on to C?
Yep.
C is the one we just talked about, applying it to the building square footage versus the dwelling unit count, right?
Yep.
I was a little confused. Can you explain to me, so I'm getting confused. Okay, so this is 221103.3.A.2, which is requiring 23 planning units due to spatial constraints. That's the waiver. And I'm looking at 22.3A, and it's that, a minimum of 2 planning units shall be provided for every 1,000 square feet or fraction thereof of building coverage. Why is your 0 planning units proposed versus, you have planning units?
A little bit to Chad. If you look at the previous one, the very first one requiring 370 planning units due to spatial constraints, 66 planning units proposed.
Right.
I think 11031A is the dwelling unit count. So I think what Chad's saying is apply our planning units to the building coverage one first. We're giving all our credit
I
to
see,
the
okay.
dwelling unit where
We're putting all 66 there.
Density.
Gotcha. So it's that you're not applying any
Maybe
towards
we can
that.
say we're compliant for the 23.
And you can use
your
trees
spatial,
for,
and then get more of the waiver for the dwelling unit.
I think that's
Yeah.
good.
Thank you. I was confused about why there was
the same number of trees, it's just where you're crediting them. So
It's which ordinance you're crediting them towards.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So we
That's
can
a,
probably remove that waiver and thus be shorter on the dwelling.
you might be able to remove that one because I think it's a good comment. We've always allowed you, if you have a tree that's both required for a street tree and it's also required for the 1,000 square feet, you can count that tree that satisfies both of those ordinance requirements. You don't got to have 2 different trees for that ordinance requirement. It's just 2 different requirements.
So you can use a street tree both to meet the street tree requirement.
Correct. That's the way we've that's the way we've always looked at it.
Okay.
But so, Mart, if you had a specific comment, certainly. I was just confused about the 0, but I get that now. It's just where they're being applied.
That's good.
And Marty, you already said, but species that you would recommend? of tree?
That Chinese elm.
I can go on and on.
I think you should.
How much time you got?
I think it sounds like they might be receptive to the full canopy.
I think there's, later on in the comment letter,
Okay.
I'll comment.
Yeah, we will come back to that a little bit later with conversations about the lilac, so.
Okay.
I think we're down to E, 32E. That's the terminal landscape islands.
E and F are similar. Those are more related to the parking lot landscape standards. You know, and this gets, so I discussed this earlier, you know, in a parking garage, you don't necessarily put landscape islands in the middle of the parking garage and plant a tree, you know, on the lower level of a parking garage or even on the upper deck. So both of those waivers relate to kind of, a parking garage almost from a landscape perspective can't be looked at the same as a surface level parking lot. You know, islands that you can plant trees in. So those waivers relate to kind of the structural limitations of the parking garage and the inability to plant trees, you know, inside a parking structure, for lack of a better description.
Yeah, and you are proposing a sort of rooftop,
We have a large island we're trying to do.
Yeah.
A green roof. I mean, obviously those are going to be lower lying, smaller plant. We can't really put a tree in there, but we're trying to just create some kind of a green feature on the rooftop.
On the upper level.
right? And you do have some islands, I suppose, the breaks in the 10 spaces there. I thought it would be awesome if you could do maybe a pocket park, but I'm not going to, require any of that. But if you did take out 2 spots, say, and make a little area, that would be incredible, I think, for the residents potentially.
I mean, part of the idea of that green space is it to be a little bit of a, one, we want, even though it's a rooftop of a parking structure, we want it to look as much like a surface parking lot as we can. And the other idea, there is a sidewalk that cuts through there, which obviously is, one, for pedestrian circulation, but 2, we do widen up the sidewalk. And we do view that a little bit as, a little bit of a green oasis for the residents. I think if we want to put, a couple benches along that sidewalk or something where they can sit in that green space and have it be a little bit of a park-like setting. I think we could add some features to that to highlight kind of the landscape nature of that area.
What I have done in other projects is put storyboards with photographs and narrative explaining what happened on the site in prior years before, if you will. And that sometimes has some interest.
It used to be Mel's Antiques. I remember going there, and wasn't the prettiest building.
But you could go back much farther.
Oh, exactly, yeah.
I mean, that would be the idea. Not so much the hardware store of Mel's Antiques, but
It was a Citgo gas station.
I remember that one, yeah.
no, I mean going back into
Sure.
before our lifetime.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
So Chad or anyone in planning, anyone want to talk or comment on these last 2, E and F of Chad's comments, and the second to last and last of the waiver requests? Or are we kind of, those are dealing with the parking structure. So any thoughts on those?
I think you kind of covered them.
Yeah.
I think that's, I think the spirit of all of these, is that this is in the center of our town, and so even others than residents will be enjoying it or not enjoying it. But anything that in the spirit of that you could do in substitute of trees. I love the storyboard idea. There's also, we have perhaps a need for more street art in Gettysburg. We have ongoing mural efforts, I believe. So you might consider those things as you plan the usability of it for our whole community.
I'd like to note part of the reason why I voted for the height increase in this entire thing was because I knew we had such a strong landscape ordinance, and I think you've done a decent job with it so far. I know you're requesting basically waivers from everything, but it is a very hard ordinance, and as we saw, some of it doesn't really even apply potentially with the setback. So just wanted to state that.
John, would you agree that like if we would have, that maybe if we would have thought of this when we were increasing density, that we would have changed the landscaping requirement related to 2 per dwelling unit in a 7-story structure might be just virtually impossible?
Well, yeah, you run into that issue, especially with the borough not having the ability to go out, we have to go up.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually you run out of physical land where you can put trees. So.
But I appreciate what Marty said too, that I did not vote for that height, but I'm glad that that was part of the way you thought of it and you're watching how the landscaping is working now.
Great.
Moving on. So the next comment, number 34, and that's one of those things, engineer to engineer type of a things. I'm going to be meeting with Alex on. There was several tracks. I don't remember the 5 or 7 total tracks on this. Whenever we're all done, it's going to be 2 lots. All of the ones.
The existing transit lot, the proposed transit lot, and then the center one. But currently, the big issue with the lot consolidation is the removal of Foth Alley.
Right, Foth Alley, getting rid of some tracks.
Foth Alley cuts into 2 lots today, so it'll become 1 lot. But
And then the transit lot will be its own.
So you're still split. We'll still have a lot to the left of Street House.
Right. And so we're just going to want to see a lot consolidation plan. And this kind of gets back into that.
We just neglected to submit it.
Yeah.
We have.
Yeah. This gets back into that chicken and an egg thing that I was saying about with the preliminary and final plan. You know, it's one of those things. In this development will require a developer's agreement and financial security to make sure they build all the improvements, but you can't vacate Foth Alley until the new street's created, because otherwise Strickhauser is stuck, and vice versa. You know what I mean? So, and you can't build all this until Foth Alley is vacated, because you can't build a building on top of an alley. So there's a true chicken and egg thing that you got to get around with just having a lot consolidation plan. So I'm just mentioning that I'll be working with Alex on that to make sure that that's added to the plan set.
Right, and that would be part of the plan.
Yeah.
For aggregating.
Sure.
Yeah, and this gets more down to, I think, the format of the approval, and obviously I'll work with the solicitor on this, but I think, the lot consolidation is a standalone plan, because as Chad is noting, you need to kind of approve that separately, so that the lots are fixed, so that when you record the land development plan, you're recording it against the
reality.
New lot.
Because we can't record a building on top of Foth Alley, so we have to deal with the lot consolidation and remove all that alley first, and then record the new building on top of it.
And then we know what
So
we're building
there's
on.
truly kind of a chicken and an egg order of how you're approving and recording these drawings.
And Adam, I'm looking at you, because I'm probably going to be
I'm looking at you, Chad.
reaching out to you for some advice on this once it gets, because they'll have to record the plan within 90 days of approval, right? So there's going to be a process where we're going to have to get this plan approved and get it recorded within 90 days. And then at that point, I guess Tim can sell the lots to himself to get this consolidation done. And that can happen at any time once it's recorded, right? That doesn't have to happen within a certain number of days. That once you get a recorded plan, he can do the conveyance of the lots whenever.
Yeah, I mean, your recorded plan doesn't go stale, but you need to get the plan recorded timely at the courthouse.
Right, that part of it has a...
Yeah, and
time
just to
restraint.
clarify, you're not actually conveying title. You're not conveying title to yourself. You're just essentially erasing interior boundaries between these various tracts. So that, I'm not concerned.
Okay.
It's really more technical.
Yeah. Focus on what you're focusing on now in this discussion. We'll deal with that when the time comes.
Okay, so number 34 is about the lot consolidation. Oh, trees number 1, chapter 25, trees, comment number 1. That's again, when we're talking about the shade tree committee is going to have to get approval of this plan. Has an application been submitted to them yet? Do you know?
I think we wanted to resolve this
Okay.
species before we go before that.
So one of the things that I pointed out here is that so I have a landscape architect, Bill, in my office that did this review for me, and he looked at our ordinance and he said the lilac isn't on there, so potentially come up with something different. I think your landscape architect was saying that the Zelkova is a little bit too big for some of these spots, so maybe we need to come up with something different. Ultimately, we'll defer to the shade tree committee, but I'm not sure if maybe this Chinese elm is the answer that we're looking for.
Yeah, I think our main concern is we kind of looked at some, streetscape images, and it seems like some of the Zelkova that are planted today are already being kind of chopped and hacked away at as they get into the power lines. There are power lines in this situation, so we do want a tree that's not going to grow too. Zelkovas are almost a little too tall for the environment. Seems like the ones that were already planted by the borough are already being trimmed up by the utility authority to kind of stay out of the power lines. We don't want to create that problem, but once again, we'll work with the Shade Tree Commission. We picked lilac because that's a shorter tree that still will give us some interest along the roadway, but, if there's another tree, we'll obviously agree to that. We don't want to plant a tree that we know is going to just grow up into the power lines.
That does raise a good process question. We're looking for guidance. So maybe it's appropriate for us to file an application with the Shade Tree Commission, submit the plan as it now stands with the weaknesses that are there, and ask for guidance from the Shade Tree Commission, and then bring that back.
Yeah, if you drive down Stratton, right before you get to the site, right before the fire department, there's a few lilac trees, and I'm a little concerned about the species. I brought up that some places are noting it for invasiveness. Here, we have quite the opposite. It's dying.
The lilacs are dying.
Yeah, and they have, I believe it's a bacterial blight, but I want to say there's probably 15 infected trees within, we have about 30. And I'd say there's probably 15 of them. I believe, I don't have, professional, I haven't had a professional look at it, but I believe it is bacterial blight sets in when you have a spring freeze, which we had 2, and Durr, I'm sure your landscape architect will be familiar with. He's the author of the Manual of Woody Landscape Plants, every college kid's favorite book as a landscape architect. But anyway, he says zones 4 to 7, 4 being very, very cold, 7 being the warmest it tolerates. The tree is native to the mountains of Japan, so it's not, we're at the southern edge, really. There's plenty of great specimens out there, but I think right now here in this area, something is not right with them. So I would recommend another tree. We've planted for small trees crepe myrtles. We've planted, if you want a native, what is it called? Gets a little apple on it.
We did the American hornbeam in a couple places, didn't we?
Yeah, that would be, yep. That would, hornbeam is a good choice. But it's Autumn Brilliance is the cultivar name of the.
I'll help you out. Autumn Brilliance.
Yeah, something berry.
Serviceberry.
Serviceberry. Thank you. Yeah.
I was going to say that earlier, and I should have.
Something Lavis, I think.
Should we bring this into the Shade Tree?
I would ask your landscape architect. I respect their opinion there. We've also done redbud. Merlot is a really nice specimen. It's red leaf.
And I think if you're having a problem with the existing lilacs, I think what we should do is talk to our landscape architect, pick a different species that still addresses our kind of height and environment concerns, and then take that issue. Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
And comment 5 on the next page is basically the same comment, so I'm just going to jump over
Just
that
looking at
one.
lilac again.
Yep.
That's the same comment.
So on to Borough Street Ordinance, comment number 2. And this is, again, one of those engineer-to-engineer things. I'm going to be asking for, and it's actually going to be probably ultimately cheaper, but everything from the railroad tracks to the northern edge of the property to be full-depth replacement. So right now the hatch pattern is a little bit confusing on what's getting trench paved versus what's getting mill and overlaid. There's so many utility trenches in there that what's going to be left is insignificant. So it's going to be cheaper and easier if they just do a temporary trench pave with 2 inches of temporary hot mix asphalt, and then whenever the project's done, you mill everything out full depth and completely repave that piece of street. It's just a pretty small little piece of street there. We do 5 inches of base and 1.5 inches of wearing. So that's going to really, I think, clean that section up, and ultimately, I'm kind of,
That's subject to the road opening permit.
yep, and I'm beating Robbie to it. He'll tell you the same thing.
That we can coordinate. Obviously,
Exactly.
like, as you noted, that's a little bit on site
Yep.
details just to quantify that.
Yep, and you may end up needing a different detail for, of course, your HOP. Whatever PennDOT wants, they're going to have on their side of it. So you might have a trench paving detail for Carlisle Street and a separate trench paving detail for Stratton Street. And then comment number 3 there, that's about the traffic impact study. And I did want Tim to hear this. He's on his way back in here. No, you're good, Tim. So we're on Borough Street Ordinance comment number 3, and that's about the traffic impact study. So as Tim said, the ball is in the borough's court to respond with a concurrence letter. Once we concur, then PennDOT can push it over the goal line. That's the traffic impact study component. Once you get approved traffic impact study, then they can apply for the HOP. The one thing that has been holding us up, we did receive a couple weeks ago, we received a revised traffic impact study that's under review by my traffic engineer. He was only down a couple of comments before that. So I'm assuming that most, if not all of those comments are addressed. We did talk about impacts to Stratton Street. We found out that that was de minimis. So we're good with that part of it. We addressed all of the issues that we had with the square. We knew that was one of the things that was failing. That's been addressed. The only thing from our perspective, and we're going to touch on this a little bit later in one of the comments, it's about the turning movements on the Hazel Alley.
I can address that.
Yep, go ahead.
So, we did receive a comment letter from a citizen of the borough objecting to the use of buses on Hazel Alley. The comment letter was not correct in the sense that it said that that's prohibited under the vehicle code of Pennsylvania. It is not. Although the vehicle code defines an alley as a road that's not used for through traffic.
Wow.
It's not
Like past the transit.
But nonetheless, we'd like to keep buses off Hazel Alley too, so we're trying to figure out a way. We're working with the rapid transit people on internal circulation, and obviously it's a pretty small site. Right now, they run 25-foot buses, 29-foot buses, and 40-foot buses. 20-foot buses pick up and discharge right in front from Carlisle Street. They don't go inside the existing side. And so the proposal there is just continue to do that on Stratton Street. The 25-foot buses, we don't have any. So the issue is the 29-foot buses. And what they're looking at is whether we think the 29-foot bus will circulate. That is to say, it will come in and exit. But it doesn't have a lot of margin for error for the driver if there are 4 other buses parked inside the station. So what they're looking at is, can they substitute something called a 25-foot cutaway bus? It does have a couple of fewer seats. So the operational issue is, would people have to stand? So are there enough, is the demand, these buses run every hour. There are 2 buses that use this transit center. And they run every hour between 6 in the morning and 7 o'clock. How many of those buses are so full that if there were 2 or fewer seats, people would have to stand? That's what they're checking. I don't have an answer. If the answer is they can work with the seating capacity of the 25-foot cutaway, that would be the answer. Then we wouldn't need Hazel Alley at all. And I think they'd be comfortable, and certainly we'd be comfortable, that the site will accommodate everything that they intend to circulate. So that's the solution.
So I did have a thought about that. This is one of those issues that's more complicated, in my opinion, that we as a planning commission really haven't talked about too much, but I'm glad you're here to maybe, and you probably know this, that one of the objections from the very beginning, we heard it tonight, was that the existing transit center was kind of a significant project for this community. There was grant money, it's historically interesting, and it's in a place where a lot of people think it makes sense to be. And I recognize that it was actually incentivized to you to move it. So you're hearing what I'm saying, but the ordinance is what it is. And so you're moving it with the, I think, encouragement of the transit center. Is that correct? In the way that you would like to build it and they want you to build it, and that's all correct. But still, I think the community, and I share this, and so this is again one of those spirit of the ordinance thing, like Stratton Street is a residential community with a handful of other types of structures, and my hope would be that you would add value to Stratton Street. Of course you will with this new development, but would you also detract value if you're having buses idling and spending a whole lot of time in that one section next to a very historic home that a famous Gettysburg resident lived in, Colonel Matt Sheeds, you're right next to him. So I think these comments are, how would you mitigate, how could you not detract from the neighborhood by having buses going on that residential street as opposed to where they are now? Like, how are you thinking through what could best serve this neighborhood?
I have no answer.
Yeah.
If you don't want buses there and you feel that detracts from Stratton Street, buses are going to detract from Stratton Street.
Yeah. Right, I know. So again, I'm just communicating to you not something that is actually in the ordinance, because the ordinance was written with this perspective, but that why you might be hearing these lingering concerns and a lot of attention about how are you using Hazel, are you turning around in Hazel? And
No, I mean, Hazel is a different story. I get it. There's at least one citizen of the borough who does not want, possibly very likely others, don't want to see buses on the We're trying, it's not a legal requirement, but we're trying in the spirit of doing what we can to keep them off. But we're not there yet, but try to illustrate a way forward that could work with rapid transit if there's enough capacity. But if your orientation as a planning commission is we Stratton Street, I'm in a bit of a...
Well, I'm not, no, that's not what I'm expressing. I'm expressing my, the spirit of what I hear from public comment to give you that information. And it's not just mine alone, but I'm not speaking for anyone but myself.
And I just want to go on the record that, as another member of the Planning Commission, that's not a concern. And, I think it's up to the chair how much time we want to spend on this and if we want to try to get a sense of consensus or, or do we decide that this has already been decided?
Yeah, I think a good, reminder is, again, the Planning Commission should be focusing on kind of what is in our purview. And so while I appreciate that there is public comment about this, I receive public comment too. I think to Charles's point, I was not on the borough in 2018, but, when those ordinances were passed, they were incentivizing moving the transit center. That's what the town, the borough, wanted to happen. And so while I might feel for people that disagree with that now, I think it would be challenging, particularly for the borough generally, to come in and say that's no longer the case. And certainly I think for the Planning Commission, we would not be making a recommendation or we would not be approving this plan. I think we'd be doing ourselves a disservice and the borough a disservice to try to disprove this, not approve this plan because the transit center is where it is. And again, I'm not saying that as a personal, do I agree where it is or not? I think we need to focus on what is within our purview and what are we approving or not approving. And I think where the transit center is not one of those things. Now, I appreciate, the movement on Hazel Alley. But again, I would also say that we would do what is, required of us. And so it's important to contextualize these comments, and we appreciate, your thoughts as well. But to Jenny's point, I do think we need to focus on kind of what makes sense for us. And so I think it sounds like...
Well, wait a minute. Hold on. I have to express my disagreement with that. And I think my colleagues might be jumping the gun that these types of comments are meant to suggest approving or not approving the plan or wanting buses or not wanting buses or not receiving consensus or receiving consensus. At the April meeting, you recall that I mentioned that in the Saldo, we have specific jurisdiction, absolutely within our purview, to evaluate traffic impacts on our residential streets. Now, one way to do that, when you declared it as de minimis, is the delay patterns, right? On the 7.8 to the...
Well, I think that's what we were looking at Stratton, the last meeting. You talked about the
you said
impact
it was
of
de minimis.
additional
What's the
seconds,
conclusion
right?
on that?
Yeah, so I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it was...
I think it's in the minutes from the last month.
Insignificant was maybe another word that I used on the amount of delay that was going to be added by this development at the intersections north of this site.
Yeah, and so
there already are some buses that use Stratton Street, so there are going to be more buses, obviously, with a transit center there than what it currently exists. But there are buses that travel Stratton Street a couple every day. The increased overall traffic was de minimis from the traffic impact studies perspective.
But you just said that we haven't actually finished it in the review in its entirety.
So the main element that I've been kind of holding on is one of the things that we wanted to look at is where are the trips going to go with Hazel Alley? Use
Right.
of Hazel Alley.
So this is
not
why
necessarily the number of trips on Stratton Street.
This is why I would insist that this is still absolutely part of our purview, and it's that chicken and egg. Dreaming about chickens and eggs.
Favorite metaphor.
But that you have we've seen some changes in the number of dwelling units, I believe, since April. We are now considering traffic patterns related to those buses. And to me, as a non-expert, and I don't believe any of us are experts on how this impacts traffic on North Stratton, a crucial corridor in our community that's residential, I think it's certainly within our purview to dwell on this a little longer to make sure that we get it right and we're getting the right information from the right person at the right, when that information comes in.
Yeah. It sounds to me, from what Tim's saying, is we still don't 100% know yet. So we're not quite ready, to make that final decision. Yeah.
No, and I appreciate that. I think my comments are more focused on the idea of completely moving the transit center.
Right.
I was suggesting the impacts
Yeah,
that the
yeah.
traffic center,
Sure,
the movement
sure.
of it has, and also to sort of
Right.
contextualize the concern about it. I certainly understand what's happened here. No one
No,
has
it's
to
a good-
go back and 2018 was significant, very, very significant, but it happened. And so here we are, and trying to add value to something as we can from this commission and ask you questions. And
It's a good reminder that the traffic impact study is not complete. As you mentioned, there are still these questions we don't know the answers to yet, and we're waiting for some feedback.
Maybe I should have answered it this way, a partial answer. I mean, since you were here in March, you did bring the design, and the design has it handy, the new transit center to the Historic Architecture Review Board. Brought it there in April.
right.
For a sketch plan, and then we brought it again last Thursday. And we did receive some recommendation. They kind of like the design.
Well, that's good to know. That's good.
So, I mean, maybe that does add some value. We really tried to be sensitive to, especially the neighbor at 111 North Stratton. And, oh yeah, there you go. So you can see the gable roof there, the angle of it matches the angle of 111 North Stratton to the north. And, we try to, in terms of the overall aesthetic, I mean, obviously it doesn't look like a 19th century building, but there still are architectural harmonies between what the new transit center will be and the residential dwellings that we try to. I mean, that is a little value.
So, I think what might be helpful here is, I think there is obviously some contention around kind of this transit center area, and I think, again, a reminder that this is not our final comment period.
No.
And so if there are, as us planning commission members, members of the public, I think if there are other suggestions, I think these developers, and we appreciate it, are open to those. I do personally share the comment, though, that, if we're moving a transit center there, there's going to be more buses there. And I feel again, that is what the borough encouraged this project to do. But I don't mean to say that to deny all type of comment on this issue. I think it's really, and again, I can't deny all comment. There's public comment, there's planning commission comment, so I could never do that. But really my comments were more just, if there are suggestions about what to do with the site as it exists, I think those would be appreciated. And we have additional time, I think, on both sides of this to kind of think about what those might be and, hear from other members of our community and to try to, suggest some of those. I do have a question, I think, later that we can talk maybe with John and my comments about the best way maybe in the next month. We don't want to do any business behind the scenes, right, Sunshine Act, but if there are maybe questions that we, as planning commission members, have, can we get those to you so that way in August you're prepared to respond to them and you're not hearing them in August. So I think that's part of the plan later. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
So I think, again, I will, and if there's more comment now, I think I'd like to hear it. But as we're thinking about this, as we're thinking about what we're going to talk about next month, this is obviously something where if there are suggestions, let's try to figure out what those are.
So, Chad, you're not ready for a letter that they're requesting at this point related to the traffic, to PennDOT? That letter that you were requesting?
From the borough.
Yeah, not tonight.
Right.
Yeah, maybe next month.
Okay.
Maybe next month. Yeah, not tonight. We want to make sure that we understand what's going to go on with Hazel Alley before we. So as we do our reviews of the traffic impact study, I'll often provide my technical comments both to you guys and directly to the traffic engineer and PennDOT. They'll see our technical comments. They'll see what you guys are relaying to me through my letters. Once we're ready to give a concurrence letter, I make it a little bit more formal. I'll make a recommendation to you that I don't have any more comments. I'm good with it. And then you guys make the decision to, yes, send to PennDOT. We concur with this traffic impact study. So ultimately, I would recommend, and I can help draft the letter, but that typically comes from the municipality at that point. So I'll provide John with the language. It's pretty standard language. It says at this point, the borough concurs with this, and they'll send it to PennDOT. So that'll at best happen next month. Yeah, not tonight. But one more thing to get into the weeds, just to help us along. John, if you could go to sheet 19 of 40, because I want to make sure that Alex is making amendments to the plan here consistent with what Tim just told us, because I'm encouraged to hear that there are some of the bigger buses that just pull off along the side of the street. That's what they currently do. I was wondering if that was incorporated into this plan. If you go to the...
Is it GP2?
No, it's VM2 3. So it's PDF. Oh, I'm sorry, you got a different PDF.
It's 35 for the
Okay.
PDF.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
So that sheet there has the turning movements that we're talking about, and on the left it shows a Sprinter bus that's 25 feet and a city bus that's 30 feet. That's a little bit different, I think, than what Tim just said, so make sure we get those turning movements updated accordingly.
Yeah, the removal of the potential removal of the 30-foot buses in new development.
Okay, gotcha.
Submitted. So the previous submission had a 40-foot bus. In discussion with Rapid Transit, the 40-foot bus does not enter the transit station at all. So we revised this to the 25 and 30. In discussions with Rapid Transit, they think the 30 is a little bit too tight. Even though we believe it works, they want more factor of safety for their drivers, especially if, they're the fourth bus, and as Tim said, there's 3 other buses already parked there, and we're trying to get a 30-foot bus.
Okay.
So the latest discussion we're having, as Tim noted, is there an opportunity to get similar capacity or sufficient capacity with a 25-foot bus that's slightly larger than the current 25-foot bus? There's a newer model of the 25-foot bus that has a couple more seats that might be able to replace that 30. If that's the case, then we would revise this plan to only show a 25-foot bus circulating the site. With that, we would show that all those circulation could occur inside this transit center.
Yep.
And then we could remove that, Hazel Alley issue and the Scott turnaround issue.
And then is the 40-foot, so it's still going to have a 40-foot bus, it's just going to stop along the street, right?
That's what they said. And looking at the vehicle list that they provided to me, they don't show a 40-foot bus being used on any of these routes. But they said if a 40-foot bus is used, it does not enter the center. It pulls up along just in the street.
So one of the things that I would like you to check on is, and I know we're getting into the weeds here a little bit, but just north of the site, you can see there is parking stalls, parking ticks there. So there's enough space for a parking stall and vehicles to still get around it. And then that starts to kind of peter out a little bit before it gets to the railroad tracks. Is there enough space there to pull over and still have unimpeded two-lane traffic?
So a 40-foot bus was coming up Stratton Street and pulled over. Could it
stop there?
Parallel stall.
Exactly. There's no parking there permitted, but it would be essentially the bus loading zone. And worst case scenario, what you might have to do is push the curb back a few feet. And it is very simple to bump that curb in a couple of feet to be able, and then of course the whole transit center and everything would go along. To Tom's point earlier, we only have, you got to keep your ADA compliance and everything for the sidewalk, so everything would probably have to get pushed back a couple of feet, but it wouldn't take much.
That shouldn't be a problem.
It might be close to enough room already. It might only be a foot or two. Just something I wanted to point out to you.
The real problem that we have on this site is the southern boundary angles. The pinch point is really the distance from north to south as you get to the eastern side of the site. It's not a length problem, it's a width problem. You can see it up there. It's just narrow on each side. That's where we run out of room. But there's nothing to do about it. It's a railroad right away.
They're not changing.
I think that would be helpful to see that too on the turning movements. If there is going to be a 40-footer that's going to stop there, show that turning move. It's obviously going to work, the turning movements, but just so that it's clear on a drawing that there's also going to be a bus stopping in the front there.
Well, we'll coordinate with Rapid Transit. They gave me a vehicle list that uses the center. It did not include the 40-foot, so I'll reach back out to them.
And we may want to do a pull-in.
In case they ever
change to a 40-foot bus.
We can show how that would function.
I think it's
And I had a couple of comments in here, and I did not, whenever Alex said the numbers that I was going to tell you, I'm going to stop one. I didn't circle these, but we had some public comment about the garage, and the responses that were in here is that we're still waiting on architectural plans. So I wanted to point that out. We did make some comments about pedestrian access to the garage, about safety, ingress, egress. We're waiting on architectural drawings to kind of finalize that whole thing.
But I think Alex does show.
Yeah, I mean, we showed the layout of the garage based on the architecture. I mean, if you go back to the...
We did put on the north side a door so people can get in now.
So, I mean, I think the big question...
And a sidewalk going to...
So when Bill was looking at the plan, he was having a hard time finding that. Maybe you can point that out to me.
And then the other question, I mean, and, you know, our discussion with the architect, and I'll confirm with him, is that, I think it's in that upper left corner.
I was just waiting for you to find it.
Yeah, I see it.
Sue finds it first.
So,
There, you see right
20,
behind
it looks
that
like he's
upper
on
building
20.
on
Ah,
Stratton
okay.
Street, there's a door.
yeah, so, right here, there's a door and a sidewalk going out to Stratton.
Okay.
In that location. Now, that was in response, I believe you made the comment last cycle about the 2 8-foot lanes leaving and no room for a pedestrian to walk. You know, that door, actually has always been there, it was not reflected on our first site plan, but we added it back in. You know, I think the feedback for this one, even though this is, we believe this is code compliant, we'll confirm with our architect, you know.
Yeah, and it's not, the other thing I wanted to say, you could see this on the drawings that we submitted the renderings. The north side of that garage is open. It's not like a...
Completely enclosed, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's there's enough of the garage is exposed to air.
Yeah, from the ventilation
So-
standpoint,
so-
outside.
So it ventilates itself and certainly from a code compliance standpoint, you know, with that much openness, ventilation isn't required.
Yeah, and
Thank you for pointing
at
that
the
out.
risk of wearing at my favorite chicken and egg metaphor,
You have a limit of 5 per night, Chad.
I think this is 5. I've run past that. But no, I did make a comment, one of my earlier comment letters, that parking garage structure reviews goes through code review. So whenever they get through land development, the next step is they're going to have building code review with all their electrical and plumbing and all those kind of things. So PMCA is going to do their review. I was suggesting that maybe they check that to be sure that it is going to meet all of the code requirement, because worst case scenario, the land development plan gets approved, they go to building code review, and all of a sudden they need another access point, and it has to change their land development plan. Then they're coming back to us, right? So my favorite comment comes back into play again.
I do think Charles checked, but we'll double check.
Yeah, and if another one needs to be added, as Tim noted, that entire north side of the garage is open and level. So in that upper left corner of the garage, where that little cutout is, you know, that is still at grade on the upper, well, further up left, where almost that little notch in the building is. We could add another access there with a sidewalk along the building running north, and there's a little service alley that comes off Stricthauser, and then we kind of have a trash and move-in drive down there.
On page 20.
We
if
could
you
run a
check.
sidewalk, you know, from the garage up to that
Of the
corner.
doc- of the
give access to
document.
alley if We wanted a second
See that
different
number?
means of pedestrian connection. Now, we wouldn't want that to be.
What is it on the bottom of 40? At the bottom it says something on 40.
Pedestrian access would come off that loading alley. But, you know, there are opportunities, as Tim noted, that
33,
entire
4 or
north
40.
side is open and level. So
Sheet 4 or
there's,
40.
you know,
4 or 40.
opportunities for additional pedestrian egress if the borough
Yeah,
would want it,
thanks.
if the borough building code would ask for such, or I guess even if you guys wanted above and beyond code, it's, you know, it's
Yeah,
some
I
additional
just, I
sidewalk.
just want to make sure, I mean, Chad, you don't want full architectural drawings of the garage for land development, do you?
So the only reason so Bill was asking still to see architectural drawings, and it was because there was a couple of comments in here. Let me just take a look. General number 6 is one of them. It was about the parapet. We were talking that we had some comments about the 6-inch curb, and there was a wall. I mean, obviously, you wouldn't have that 19-foot high drop-off right along a parking without a parapet that would stop a car. So we originally made that comment. There's been some responses. So until we could, yeah. So until we could see that, I guess, as long as that's clear on the LD plans.
Why don't we put a detail?
Or a detail.
I think we could do either a conceptual cross-section or something to work with the architect.
That's what it's, okay, yeah, okay, I get it. We'll
Yeah.
add a detail showing.
Or a conceptual drawing, yeah. That was one of the things.
Showing that,
And I was thinking there was one more there that he had.
you have that.
I know he had a comment about the fence. It's not that.
I mean, I think the other architectural was the, 906. You know, kind of how the green roof details play out. We were talking about that with the architecture. I believe we.
Which comment number was that?
That was in the landscape section, I believe.
Oh, that's what, yeah, that's what it was. It was to make sure that we understood how the plantings were going to work on top of the garage.
I thought we added a typical section to that, but we can maybe get some more detail.
Yeah, we will not be doing a full, like, code review of any architectural drawings. It's just how it relates to the LD plans to make sure that those things match each other.
So there's more detail on the green roof section.
Yep, the green roof comment, the parapet comment. Now that I understand where that door is, I think those were kind of the only 3 from a LD plan perspective. Okay, so if I can advance this conversation, that was ordinance number 3. I'm going to general comment is the second to last page, comment number 10. It would be general comment number 10.
I think
My-
we proposed the same kind of decorative fence that they have now.
Yeah, and I just wanted,
Discussing with Rapid Transit, they built kind of a black aluminum
On the
distinct
south
style
side.
fence on the existing transit center. They want us to use that same detail, so we can provide that.
and I guess my question there is, maybe John, you might know the answer to this, so Harb likes to look at fences with a LD. Did they look at the fence too with that building whenever they approved it?
They did not, but what it sounds like is going to happen is it would be an administrative approval for in-kind materials.
Okay.
So
So that's all, as long as you have the Harb approval for the fence.
I would have to go back to the initial COA approval for the entire structure, for the entire project, to see about if fencing was included with that. I believe it
I
was.
think it was, and we said we used the same
Yeah.
material.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very much like what you see there now on the south side of the transit center, separated from the railway, right?
The original,
It's like a black galvanized aluminum decorative fence.
Yeah.
the original plan had the chain link, so this is an upgrade to that.
This makes it look good.
Yeah. And then, so number 11, we already talked about there. That's the comment about Hazel Alley, and there was some, part of the response there was that Scap's parking lot was going to be used potentially as a turnaround, but it sounds like we're going to try to avoid that if possible.
We're trying to avoid that.
Okay?
Hopefully we'll get there. And what would you say as well?
And then lastly, number 13, I made a comment about the ProWag, that's public right-of-way accessibility guidelines, and how it's not just the curb ramps that have to be ADA compliant, but also the crosswalk, the crossing of the street. This is a new thing that they're pushing a little bit harder on. I understand that it starts to slope down there. That may be difficult. Alex, I'll work with you on the specifics of there. If it has to be technically infeasible, I'm okay with that, such that it's to the maximum extent practicable. That's how it's listed in there. You have to show that you've tried, and as I said earlier, I'm going to be asking for that road to be, it's going to make sense, and it was going to be cheaper to rebuild the road than to try to do all the trench paving and mill and overlay. So if you're rebuilding the road anyways, you can try to get it as flat as possible. There are some sections in the ProWag where it allows you to go to, 1 in 48 2%. It's just over 2%. It's like 2.1. It does allow you to go up to 5% where there's no stop control. In this case, where there is a at-grade crossing for the railroad, that won't necessarily apply, but that would be one of the provisions of that requirement that we could take a look at and say, okay, look, we can't meet, it's technically infeasible to meet the 2%. We can get to 5%. I need to have a little bit more of what we can get. What is the maximum? We're going to try to flatten it out as much as we can, and I understand you start to you chase the slope. You start raising that bottom or the northern side there of that crosswalk, then it raises the access point to the driveway, which you're also trying to flatten out. So it's going to be a really critical spot right there, trying to get over the railroad tracks, cross that crosswalk at 2%, and then across the face of that driveway is going to be a lot of. So we might need a couple of spot elevations and try to show that you're meeting, again, the ordinance language says, or not the ordinance, but the ProWag says the maximum extent practicable.
Yeah, and we can work through it, I think, and we talked a little bit about this, I think, in the last meeting. I think Stratton's probably a little bit easier. I think the bigger concern is maybe Carlisle Street, and then obviously go through some PennDOT review as well. Mm-hmm. But we spent a good amount of time last time talking about this, where we either put it at the top of the hill, the bottom of the hill, or in the middle. From a layout standpoint, we like this location shown. Mm-hmm. That is probably the steepest portion of the kind of the ramp down. And there are a lot of drainage features and other features along that roadway that kind of makes regrading that somewhat difficult. But I think to your point, I think you and I just kind of need to have a meeting and talk through, what is reasonable to get that as flat as humanly possible while preserving and limiting impacts to kind of some of the surrounding features.
Yeah, in that location, there's a very big inlet, which is actually an outlet. It just, maybe, John, you can show, it's like a gray rectangle, real skinny, that thing right there. Actually, the water, it looks like an inlet, but the water actually comes out of that. The water goes under the railroad tracks and comes out of that. There's really not too much you can do with that the way it is, so I think he put the crosswalk at the only place that's practicable. I'll let you know this, and unfortunately we failed on our build grant for the 6th time for the Gateway Connectivity Project. We're going to be reapplying. We're going to be looking at some other avenues. We're going to be talking to our state senators on how we can potentially get some funding for this project. Should we get we are engaged in the design. Within 2 years, we're going to be ready to build this. If we get funding for construction and we would happen to beat you to it, that is going to be gone. That inlet will be gone. We're going to be doing something completely different with it. If we beat you to it, we'll fix that and make it better at that time. But if we don't beat you to it, what you've done here, I think, is the best you can do. So I don't have any objections to that.
Well, we can talk through some options.
The end of your comments,
that is it for me.
Okay. Thank you, Chad. I mean, I know that was a lot. I appreciate your thoughts on this. So I think at this point would be a good time if there was anything that came up on the Planning Commission members' minds while we were reviewing this to let the developers know. That'd be great. But additionally, I think, again, we'll figure out a way to not do business while we're not meeting, but to provide you with any questions or comments we have so that way you have them and can be prepared to respond to them in August rather than us asking you in August and then you having, potentially having to go back and figure out the answer. So we'll figure out the best method with that John, you and I can talk, and we can just it's probably just emailing you, I imagine.
Yeah, emailing it to me. I will then forward it to Chad, the development team. In terms of timing, though, we're running short. It's going to be August meeting before we know it. We would probably need to have comments by that first full week in August. So preferably before August 6th or 7th.
That gives us a few weeks, 2 weeks.
Just, looking ahead about what you mentioned, Mr. Harrison, about perhaps asking you for an extension, I think that's very likely, given that this will be the second meeting of the new plan in August. I do love the idea of sending questions in advance, but the responses to those questions might create a few more questions where it could be, as the county review and the other reviews come in. I don't think we have to do it tonight, though, but just to suggest that we hold that option for next month.
Well, I'll throw you all a little bit of a curveball.
Okay.
All
right.
Mr. Boyer can respond to this one. Specifically, with revisions, there is a provision in the current saldo that implies that with a revision, the 90-day shot clock restarts. Now, with MPC, I'm not quite sure if that provision is really legitimate, and I wanted to just see with the solicitor beforehand.
I like the shot clock metaphor. That's fun. I would suggest that rather than play around with that you just get an extension. Yeah.
I think you're very good at having a quorum, but that took plenty of August meetings. I come to the borough office.
Yeah.
Sorry, no quorum. And if that happened to happen at the August meeting, the clock would run out.
Yeah.
It might be a good idea
To do it tonight.
Now, you certainly have my permission.
So formally, we ask you, right?
Right.
So,
You're accepting a extension request that you're accepting the extension from them. Yeah.
Okay. I'm certainly not opposed to that. So the motion would be, we would be accepting the request from the developer, from the applicant. Another
90 days.
90 days.
Yeah, that makes, I would.
And again,
That takes some pressure off in August.
yeah. So there's an idea out there. Would there be a motion from anyone on the planning commission?
Are you checking to make
Or are
sure
you checking the
90
date?
hits within our October meeting?
It does.
Okay.
The 19th. Yeah.
Okay,
Why don't you just
great.
pick that
Good,
date?
good
All right,
thought.
then I'll move that we,
19th.
Should be.
31.
There's no federal holiday that's going to move us or anything?
the Columbus or indigenous
It's a week
peoples
too late
day.
for that.
Columbus Day, 12th.
Okay, good. Because I just don't want it to be on a Tuesday. If we say the 19th and then it's
Right.
on the Tuesday for whatever reason, we'd be like, ugh.
Yeah.
Well, I'll move that we extend the review process period for another 90 days to October 19th, 2026.
I'm just verifying that is in fact 90 days, Charles.
Okay.
And you don't have to pick 90 days, right? You can just
No, you
pick a
don't.
date.
No, but I want to make sure you're not making an incoherent motion.
Okay.
Because 90 days is October 18th, which is a Sunday. I would suggest that you
Can you rescind your
extend to
motion?
the 19th.
Yes.
rather than-
I move that we extend the review period for this land development plan until October 19th, 2026.
Second.
Thank you. So Charles moved, John seconded. Any further discussion? And again, I think I'll add further discussion that it's my intention that, I don't want to move forward this prematurely, but that we will continue to work on this in August. I think I share some of Charles' concerns. It'd be a happy surprise, I think, if we were ready in August, and we'd all be happy with it. But, potentially that still gives us September as well to work through some of these issues. So I think we're setting a far goal to make sure we have plenty of time, to your point, in case there's quorum issues. But this does not mean we're not going to work on it again until October. That's all I think I'm trying to say.
And this
So,
doesn't preclude, say, a September vote.
Indeed.
that we're
Okay.
just extending our
Right.
our last date
I
possible.
just wanted to,
Yeah. No,
Thank you.
no later than.
Yeah.
Right.
So the way that it would work is that we're going to provide comment, you would respond to those comments, and then we'd get it in our packets. It does help if we can get it a little earlier than the Friday before Monday, although I know that's often impossible, John, so I'm not demanding anything, but.
What we can do, it wouldn't be deliberation if staff is just sending an email directly to the board from the applicant, correct?
You don't want to be in a position where you're replying all. Email is the downfall of that.
But so just send it to him, to John.
Send it to John.
Certainly.
And then John can say, I
Relay.
received communication.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Da-da-da.
Yeah,
But
I think
you're not discussing amongst yourselves over email outside of a
It's
meeting.
a good reminder, yeah.
But also, Adam, the vote that we're about to take will be our 6th extension. So it doesn't mean, when you said no later than, you just mean, it doesn't mean that we can't extend it again if necessary. We're not making that, okay.
Correct. I'm saying that should
The
you
current
be in a
motion.
position to and be inclined to approve a plan, that
Yeah,
you
of
could
course.
do it prior to that October 19th date.
Okay.
So any additional questions or comments about the motion?
Yeah,
Are we
just
ready?
wanted to make sure that we're clear on the language there for that motion, and maybe Adam can, because I think the motion was for to extend, and I think maybe the better way to word it is to acknowledge the developer's approval to extend.
You're accepting the grant of an extension from the developer.
Accepting the
is what
grant
you're
of an
doing.
extension. There you go.
This seems to
Think our
change
motion
every
should
time we do this, depending on who goes first. I'll revise my,
This is,
Can we
as an
revise the
academic
motion?
exercise, folks, this is why you want to make sure that you have well-written minutes.
would you want me to withdraw my motion and make it again, Adam?
Don't we have to technically vote on it because it's been seconded? I mean, I don't know what the...
If you're all in agreement, you can withdraw it, Charles.
All right, I withdraw so we get it correct.
Any-
And I think then John has to withdraw too, his second.
I mean, any objection to withdrawing?
Okay.
No.
All right, let me.
Okay.
Chad, could you just say it again?
I think Adam said it best.
Okay, say it.
You're accepting the developer's grant of an extension through October 19th.
Okay, so I move that we accept the developer's grant of an extension until October 19th, 2026.
Second.
Thank you. So Charles again moved and John seconded. And I think we're good with discussion, or seems like we are. So all those in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Great. Thank you. We know that's a long process. We appreciate your patience as well, and to the public as well. We appreciate your patience, but we'll continue discussing this. As for other new business, John, John, are we okay with potentially tabling?
Simrat.
Well, I
Right,
can just
sorry,
go over this very
Simrat. Sorry, I forgot about
quickly.
Simrat real quick.
Yeah.
We definitely want to deal with Simrat. So next up, thank you,
Don't
Adam.
forget about that one. Yeah.
On table old business is SLD 25-0002, which is Simrat on 351 East Water. And they are not here. Are we at a deadline for their?
So their application review goes until August. Staff would still be recommending the item be reviewed. Once we get to a period of 1 year without any real substantial improvement on the site plan, that's when we would be making a recommendation for council to deny, which we're not at that point yet, but there's nothing new to report at this time.
Okay. Any thoughts from planning? Or are we good with continuing to table that? Okay, great. Thanks, Adam, for that reminder.
Sure thing.
So then the only other item of new business would be the subdivision land development ordinance update. John, do you know how long you're?
We'll do this very quickly. Staff has provided on the dais for this evening the proposed checklist for sketch, preliminary, and final plans.
And that's what you had for us here in this?
Yes. Most of that information is direct carryover. There are some minor changes to allow for the applicant to not be required to print 7 of these stacks, things like that. So it's not a requirement. It doesn't mean they still can't do it, and it wouldn't. If it's expeditious for the Planning Commission to review that information in a paper format, that can always be relayed to the applicant. In terms of the overall document that was sent out with on Friday, let me pull up the presentation real quick.
Can I ask a question, John?
Yeah.
I try not to insert myself in these too much. Does the borough have a large printer that is capable of printing what I call tabletops?
So no.
Okay. And the reason I ask that is it can be difficult for people who are representing applicants or developers, so to speak, when you're looking to do something pretty small to get those big plans printed. And I was just trying to figure out if you just send a PDF, if there was a way, if the Planning Commission were to say, we want to see this big stuff laid out on the table, so that the commission's not being shortchanged.
So we are still requesting that they provide one paper copy, so there will still be some kind of paper. One of the problems we've also run into as of late is Adams County Recordation is only accepting a relatively small size sheet, so these plan sets will most likely have to be resized prior to recordation, the ones that were presented tonight.
And that's a newer thing, I would say, within the last year.
That's why your plans are smaller, aren't they? The stormwater plan you just gave us.
No, that was
That's
just
not
because I
recorded.
shrunk them down to save some paper.
Oh, I see.
I think it's 18 by 24.
Yeah.
Is what they want, as we found out at work.
Yes, they want 18 by 24. So all they're going to do is they're going to take these plans and shrink them down and plot the exact same plot, so it won't be to scale anymore.
Well,
it'll be to an odd scale.
Adam, that's exactly what Alana held a at-home Adams County Coalition meeting this morning that I got to participate in, and in planning for that, I read about if you're doing a small project, could there be a small project track where you don't have to supply this? I think with this project, it's hypocritical because I just requested this but it's a large development.
Sure.
And if we're trying to do imaginative things and encourage attainable housing and the rest, I totally support giving people an easier track.
Yeah. I mean,
Submission.
I'm just envisioning things that when an engineer, in a formal sense, is not required.
Yeah.
Right,
You just
you're
have
right.
people, having an attorney and somebody kind of draw stuff up on their own. Ways to make it a little bit easier for easier projects.
So really, when it comes to lot consolidations or those minor subdivisions that you all have to approve, it can be a real challenge for a homeowner to have to work with a surveyor to make those documents. It becomes almost the same cost as the physical survey. So it's become absurd, the printing costs, and so we have the ability to do PDF. As long as we save them as an archivable format, it's acceptable for our retention requirements from the Commonwealth, so it makes sense.
So you've already proposed that, or we will be discussing?
That's what's being proposed with the documents that are provided there.
Yeah.
Tonight's focus, though, I just wanted to go over some of the quick things for MPC guidelines, site plans, and then subdivision. So overall, we're just talking about the main component of site plans, as opposed to what we'll discuss in the coming months about improvement guarantees, landscaping, and then like other negative externalities. The document itself, let me pull that up. Oops, not that one. Well, shoot. In terms of, where did we put that? There it is. Okay. Apologize for the delay. In terms of the Saldo ordinance itself, though, most of the document is in a manner that is just, I don't even know where this cursor went, requirements per the MPC. So a lot of the text and things aren't going to be changing between documents. Here we go, red line. So most of this, it's pretty simple changes we've made, making sure just that borough engineer, planning commission, borough staff, planning, zoning, code enforcement officer, zoning officer, that language is used consistently throughout the document. Also establishing electronic portable document format, PDF.
Are you displaying something, or you just pulled it up
I-
yourself?
Oh my! I'm going so fast. This thing, okay. Yeah, there we go. How about that?
Yay.
Okay.
Like a comic.
So, you'll see, like, in this case, we have language that says you have to have 7 print copies of the sketch plan and the accompanying application. What we've gone through is general, just changing this for like planning commission review. You're going to be providing copies of the documents to the zoning officer. Let's see.
Wait, John, did you do this from scratch? Because we have all these edits already somewhere, don't we? Or are you building from those?
This was provided in an email to planning commission.
Oh, no, I mean, when you developed these, I know I received that, but
Yeah, it's a good question, and maybe, John, we need to get together offline, because I did email you, this is a while back, this might go back a year or two, all of the stuff. We had a complete brand-new draft of a saldo.
Okay.
And I think what Charles is concerned is that you might be...
well, if you've already done the work, but you might want to just look at
we already
the...
did.
So
It would have been one of Carly's, it was right before rezoning.
We had it really close to getting pushed across the goal line, and then what happened was the zoning ordinance came in and took precedence, and then we put saldo on a back burner. But we have a draft that's almost completely, it basically wipes out the existing saldo and starts from scratch.
Okay, so what we'll do then, I'll be working with Chad on those issues, and then we'll recirculate this aspect of the site plan approval process. Overall, though, if there are other requirements looking ahead to the future, landscaping, lighting, things like that. If there are areas you would like us to explore, send myself, Chad, an email. We can look into it. We're looking, in terms of best practices, Montgomery County, Pennsylvania really provides the state standard for a lot of these ordinances and has the model ordinances available readily. So we've been utilizing, at least staff's been utilizing a lot of those as a basis. But overall, the real interesting stuff is, that's what we were going to talk about next month with the improvement guarantees and actual improvement methods. So one of the problems we run into is right now our spec sheet, our design standards for like asphalt mix and stone mix for streets is on this like piece of paper. It looks like it's been Xeroxed like 20 different times. Like having clear graphics and things like that is something that we're going to be really providing with this, because it's very technical, but it's technical in a sense that we make the applicant go through all the engineering, making sure that we just are saying up front that they have to do it. What the actual plans that they produce, we're not necessarily at a capacity or a method to require that they be designed in a certain way, but we do at least have the ability to say that they're going to use best practices and engineering standards. So I'll work with Chad on that. Take what you will from this brief conversation, though, that in terms of the sketch plan, preliminary plan, and final plan, the goal with what staff was providing tonight would be to have not necessarily a super streamlined process, but a process whereby the applicant is aware of the requirements for the planning documents, but then also allowing for some general flexibility to produce those documents.
Can I just make a few thoughts real quick? I'll be very brief. But, yeah, I'm glad that you could help John see where those things are, because we did spend a long time on that. But, John, for your research or for your expertise in helping us with things that have come up, I believe, since that plan. One of them, and I mentioned it to you the other day, is when Brandon Stone came and talked to us about the dark sky concept. I thought that was very compelling, and maybe that's something we would want to consider.
And that would be when we're thinking about this ordinance, we need to possibly separate landscaping and lighting into their own ordinance, because this is only attacking the problem when someone comes in to build something brand new. It's not if I install a spotlight directly into your house or something like that. That's something where a general code could come into effect, where we'd be able to have either a code enforcement officer or a police officer actually do an enforcement on a property owner.
Yeah. So that was one, and then a smaller projects track is just a thought that I've been looking into. Is that even possible? But something that would be an affordability lane, particularly for somebody doing something like affordable attainable housing, or something that would enhance density but not be a major project.
Well, so what makes things a lot easier for a developer is when they don't have to come here.
Right. Right.
One of the ways the SALDO allows for the developer to not have to come here is by an exemption for specific development types.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm.
And so currently we do have that if you're building an agricultural building. And so
That's common.
And I think we had one that has come in
Really?
in the past 2 years. It was the greenhouse associated with the
the ACE?
with the ACE. That would have been a land development plan otherwise. There could possibly be a residential method in there. The issue, though, that we run into whenever you have more than a duplex, a triplex, or beyond, that's a UCC. It triggers your commercial building.
Okay, well, it's just something that, and then the last one was ADUs. We spent time to allow more ADUs across the borough. I think they're also achieving density and attainability, but maybe people don't know how to do them, or they're cumbersome, and so could the SALDO be waived for those, or could there be a pre-approved set of plans?
There is no subdivision land.
So you don't need a subdivide to do it. That was a question that came up. You don't need to subdivide to do an ADU.
No, in the borough, you're allowed to have multiple principal uses on one parcel, so you're
Okay.
allowed to have multiple structures. And we do have a few properties where there are at least 2 or 3 houses on one parcel. The problem that creates is it comes back to that fee simple land transaction.
Right.
You're never going to be able to buy it. You might
Right.
be able to rent it, but there's going to be never that full ownership.
Okay, I just wanted to get those out, and I'll wait for the next meeting for the rest.
Any other thoughts from?
One quick thing for me, and John, I just forwarded you those emails from years ago when we were talking about this. So you should, if you don't have them in your inbox tomorrow, give me a shout. But when we were looking at that, we were also looking at the street and sidewalk ordinance, if you can remember. So that was whenever John, because I wholeheartedly agree with what he just said about some of these sections of the SALDO should just be a standalone ordinance, like lighting. It makes sense to me to make that separate. But I think the sidewalk ordinance, there's a lot of details, like John just said, that are really, really outdated in our SALDO. They should just point to the sidewalk ordinance. So we might want to consider that too. The stuff that I just forwarded you from 2024 there, John, talks about the SALDO. We put a lot of time into both the SALDO and the sidewalk ordinance. The street and sidewalk ordinance are both it's part 1 of Chapter 21 and part 2 of Chapter 21. We did the street ordinance already. We haven't done the sidewalk ordinance for a long, long time, and it's inconsistent with our zoning ordinance and our SALDO. So we should really get, I think, the sidewalk ordinance of that updated when we do the SALDO.
We actually walked the sidewalks together.
Walked
on
the
this commission,
sidewalks. We took a
which
lot
was
of
fun.
time into that.
You've been talking about sidewalks
Forever.
As long as I've been coming to these meetings. No, I'm serious. I mean,
Oh, that's what people talk about in town too, so that's
Yeah.
important. Yeah.
Yeah. So that part should go hand in hand, I would think, with our updates of our, maybe, my opinion, that's just as important as the lighting component. So that's all.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is, I think for a while we were kind of, particularly with the station project, not stalled, but like didn't have as much meat. But obviously tonight is a good example of that. We spoke for close to 2 hours, and so I don't know what the Borough Council's timeline is, but I would imagine if we speak for another 2 hours on the station project in August, I don't think we might have much of an appetite to then do an hour discussion on this. So just,
Yeah.
I think I'm happy to move forward, and I think there is a lot of meat we can get into with this, but just making sure that, we have the time to do that in these meetings, so.
Yeah,
Whatever
that'll
feedback.
be relayed to Borough
Yeah.
Council.
Yeah. And if I can just intercede here a little bit. The saldo is something that is in need of updating for a number of reasons, but I think you would do well not to rush your rewrite of it.
Definitely.
Because that is so much of what you do. Second to zoning, that is probably the most important thing.
Yeah.
So I don't want that to be glossed over because I don't know that you're going to be revisiting it in a comprehensive way anytime soon. So you want to make sure you get it right.
Yeah. Agree. Any other thoughts on saldo? Okay. So announcement, the next planning commission meeting is scheduled for August 17th, 2026 at 7 p.m. in this room. Additional comments from planning commission members. I will say the first one. I apologize I did not do this sooner, but Brandon Sherman is our new alternate member to the planning commission. So thank you. Quite a first meeting, a long one for sure. But he'll be joining us for these meetings, and of course we'll be voting if any one of us cannot make it to the meeting. So thank you very much for helping us out, and welcome. And thanks, Adam, for reminding me to welcome you.
It seems so long ago. Did we approve the minutes today? We did, okay. All right.
Any other announcements from planning commission members?
I have just a comment. I want to thank you, Nick, for, chairing this in a way that we sort of balance, discussion, but also keep it centered within the limits. And I think it benefits us going forwards to think of us as stewards of borough resources, and how much work, really taking that long view, how much work we have to accomplish and how much time we have a limited number of meetings, and just keep that balance to not, we could certainly, some of this is very interesting. We could talk forever about crepe myrtles versus lilacs, which are not even allowed, whatever. But I do think we need to be careful of short-term and also long-term goals to accomplish what our charge is.
Yeah, thank you. Any additional public comment? And this is not required to be restricted to the agenda. Okay. Any motions around adjournment?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
We're moving. Jenny, sorry. I was like, what do I do next? Jenny moved. Charles seconded. All those in favor? Further discussion? No. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed?
All right.
Thank you all.
You're adjourned.
I feel like this should have been a gavel night. I should have been like...